Chapter 4588. N. Xiaohua nodded and smiled. Since that's the case, I believe Sun Jian's side is also investigating. We should also make preparations. Master will rest for a period of time before going to investigate the location of the Immortal Palace and contact your martial uncle Wenxiu. Yes, Master. Fujiwen agreed and said, then disciple. We'll also try to contact the 4 great families and see if I can get some information. And Nangong Jingyin, she actually dares to snatch the princess from Master. We must teach them a lesson. Tao Wu also shouted angrily. Xiaohua waved his hand and said rather leniently, when Master heard those words just now, I also felt uncomfortable in my heart. However, the Nangong family doesn't know of Master's relationship with the new princess. They wanted to use the new princess' freedom as the price to threaten the empress. However, the indirect effect was also to let the new princess obtain her freedom. However, their plans were all for naught in the end. That won't do. Tao Wu raised her head and said stubbornly, how can a toad like Nangong Jingyin covet the princess? Although Master is magnanimous and has telepathy with the princess, disciple feels uncomfortable just thinking about it. Furthermore, the Nangong family will definitely publicize this matter. Even if the princess marries Master in the future, Master's face won't look good. Tao Wu is right. Xiaohua nodded. Jiwen, send disciple to contact Nangong Pingping of the Nangong family. Tell him that Master has something to say to Nangong Tianjiao. Yes, disciple understands. Fujiwen agreed without thinking. Xiaohua then explained, Nangong Pingping is the leader of the Nangong family who entered the Star Moon Palace. Master has saved their lives before. Yes, disciple understands. Fujiwen smiled and said, Master has made a trip to the Star Moon Palace. I wonder how many people he has saved. Oh, Master, disciple heard that Jai Xingzi and Gusu Churi also entered the Star Moon Palace. Did they have any fortuitous encounters? Tao Wu and Gusu Churi had a good relationship and naturally thought of the two of them. Her tone was filled with envy. Xiaohua smiled and said, there are many fortuitous encounters in the world. The Star Moon Palace is just one of them. This time, the Star Moon Palace is different from before. Who knows how many humans and demons have died in there? What is there for you to be envious of? When he spoke up to this point, Xiaohua looked into the distance and frowned slightly. However, I've already promised Jai Xingzi and Gusu Churi in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm that your martial uncle Wen Chu would go to the Gusu clan on Jai Xingzi's behalf to propose marriage for Gusu Churi. Now that he's become the Immortal Palace's Master of Literature Palace, it's quite troublesome. I have to hurry and find your martial uncle Wen Chu. Master. Upon hearing this, Tao Wu hurriedly said, You. Hey. Fujiwen frowned and stopped him. Xiaohua was puzzled and asked, What's wrong? It's nothing. Fujiwen smiled and said, I'm going to wait for Master to come back and get married. After all, if I don't go through the ceremony, I won't be able to be with Momo and have to give her family an explanation. Boom. Hearing these words, Xiaohua's mind suddenly gave birth to a clap of thunder, and the thunderstorm in the sky once again shook violently. That's right. Xiaohua lost his voice and said in a low voice, even Momo and Gusu Churi want a status. Xian is Immortal Emperor Go Chen's 9th princess. How can I save her without knowing the truth? Those who know won't say much, but what about those who don't know? What will they think? What will they say? Didn't Fujiwen tell me 2 stories that day? If I don't save Xian openly, if I don't openly propose marriage to the Immortal Palace, how can I stop everyone's tongues from wagging? How can I give the Nangong family a fair counterattack? Even if Xian doesn't care about these things, the Immortal Palace cares about these things, this Zhao's descendants care about these things, and in the future, the Fortune Gate's hundreds of millions of disciples will care about these things. Xiaohua seemed to be pondering, but also seemed to be muttering to himself. He didn't avoid Fujiwen. When Fujiwen and Tao Wu heard this, shock appeared on their faces. At the same time, Tao Wu was so excited that his face turned red. He grabbed Fujiwen's hand and stared fixedly at Xiaohua. That's right. Xiaohua had already made his decision. He looked up at Fujiwen and said, now that the Immortal Palace has obtained the 5 energies origin method, that half of the heavens will has no meaning. Princess Xian's punishment should also have a conclusion. However, this conclusion needs an excuse, and also an explanation for Immortal Emperor Go Chen to the world and the other 8 princesses. The Nangong family just happened to give the Eastern Sea Empress this excuse. I'm sure they've already started to prepare and send a letter to the Immortal Palace. Xian gave me half of the heavens will to save me that day. After I used it, I had no way of returning it to Xian. This caused Xian to be imprisoned in the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal. Since Xian is like this, I can't let her down. I must openly save her. Xian has such deep feelings for me, so I can't let her down. I must announce to the world that I am Xian's true love. I'm prepared to propose marriage to Immortal Emperor Go Chen. Ah. After listening to the end, Fujiwen was a bit dumbfounded. This was because he understood Xiaohua the most and knew that Xiaohua didn't like to attract attention. Therefore, all his previous thoughts were based on this. It would be best if they didn't reveal anything and quietly rescued the new princess. However, he didn't expect that Xiaohua would propose marriage to Immortal Emperor Go Chen in order to save Princess Xian. Master. Bai En was abnormally excited and shouted, your idea is the best. Disciple feels that Her Highness likes it the most. If she knew, she would be so happy to marry Master. However, Disciple still has a small doubt. Speak. Xiaohua asked. Bai En replied, Master, don't forget. The Nangong family proposed marriage first. Moreover, the Eastern Sea Empress has already agreed to the Nangong family. With her temper, she definitely won't go back on her words. If she doesn't say anything, the Immortal Emperor will definitely agree to the Nangong family's marriage. Now that Master proposes marriage, how can these two agree? After all, it's first come first serve. Hee, that's easy. Xiaohua smiled. Master won't propose marriage first. I'll ask about Princess Xian's whereabouts first and save her before the Nangong family. Then, I'll return to the Immortal Palace to propose marriage. It's best if we can cook the rice. Fujiwen took the opportunity to shout. Bah! Bai En spat, but still nodded. This method is the most realistic. No. Xiaohua smiled. Others can, but not Xian. The 9th princess of the Immortal Emperor must have etiquette above all. Master, you can actually hide on the side and suddenly make a move when the Nangong family saves Xian. Fujiwen reminded again. No. Xiaohua shook his head. When it comes to saving Xian, you must take the initiative in everything. You can't give anyone a handle. If you want to do it, you have to be the hero who saves the beauty and the lovers finally get married. You have to do it perfectly. That's not right, Master, you. How can you interrogate Immortal Emperor Go Chen? Fujiwen asked curiously. Even if you find the Immortal Palace, how can he meet you? Master is the supreme cultivator of the human race, equal to the Immortal Emperor. How can he not meet you? Bai En curled his lips and said a few words to Fujiwen. Then, he reminded Xiaohua, however, Master, Immortal Emperor Go Chen is the most cunning. I'm afraid you won't be able to out-talk him. You have to think of a plan to interrogate him. I'm the worst at talking. Xiaohua stretched out his hands, looked at them flashing with lightning, and laughed. I'm the best at persuading people with virtue. Master. Fujiwen exclaimed, could it be that you want to fight at the Lingyan Palace? Xiaohua rolled his eyes at Fujiwen and said, Disciple, I'm going to ask for Xian's whereabouts and then ask for her hand in marriage. If I fight at the Lingyun Palace and trample on Immortal Emperor Go Chen's face, do you think Immortal Emperor Go Chen's temper will be good enough to not care about this? And still betroth Xian to me? That's true. Fu Jiwen rubbed his nose and said awkwardly, not to mention Immortal Emperor Go Chen who leads the Confucians, even a rich man with some farmland won't agree. So. Xiao Hua smiled and said, with my face as a human Grand Ascension stage master, I'm sure Immortal Emperor Go Chen will tell me if I ask for Xian's whereabouts. Then, I'll rescue Princess Xian and bring her to the Immortal Palace to beg for mercy. Then, I'll catch him off guard. What's done can't be undone. Master. Bai En said in disbelief, you're thinking too simply. The Immortal Emperor represents the heavenly prestige. As the saying goes, the heavenly prestige is unpredictable. Maybe he really won't reveal it. Don't forget, even the Imperial Empress doesn't know where the princess is imprisoned. Xiao Hua sneered and looked up at the sky. Then there's nothing to say. Xian has treated me so well, I can't let her down. Then, I'll destroy the Lingyun Palace. Good, good, good. Bai En jumped up in joy and shouted, attack the Lingyun Palace. We must attack the Lingyun Palace and let the 8 princesses know that the 9th princess's husband is someone who can pierce through the heavens. Let's see who dares to hit us when we're down. Master, you have to think twice. Fu Jiwen looked at the old man and the young man with a wry smile. Neither of them was afraid of making a big deal out of this. Unfortunately, Bai En ignored Fu Jiwen and said anxiously, then. Master, if that's the case, I have to contact Marshal Antwen Chu and hurry to find the Immortal Palace. If we're too late, the Nangong family will take the lead and that will be bad. Attacking the Lingyun Palace is just a preparation. I don't think it'll happen. Of course, if it really does happen, then. It'll be the time for our fortune gate to establish our prestige. This is also an opportunity that Immortal Emperor Go Chen has given me. Xiao Hua smiled coldly. So, there's no need to involve Marshal Antwen Chu. I have my own plans. How does Master want to find the Immortal Palace? Bai En was a little confused. Give it as a reward, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 4589. Master has already asked Li Xiang about it. Xiao Hua smiled. The Hidden Immortal Mainland's Jadestage Conference is about to be held in a month. Isn't that a great opportunity? Master, what does the Jadestage Conference have to do with the Immortal Palace? Bai En was even more confused and asked curiously, Disciple knows about the Jadestage Conference. That year, Gusuchodi was still a star monarch. That place is where the guilty officials of the Immortal Palace are punished. Even the Star Monarch Hall's Hall Master wouldn't know about the Immortal Palace's location. Fu Jiwen seemed to have thought of something and asked with a smile, Master, why did you send your disciples to snatch an Imperial Preceptor's lot? Could it be that Master wants to establish a country? Bai En was unhappy that Fu Jiwen changed the topic, but just as she was about to speak, Xiao Hua answered, Disciple do you know about the Shao country? Of course I know Fu Jiwen smiled. Disciple had just returned to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range and heard the disciples talking about the Shao country. Is Master planning to establish a country in the Shao country? Yes. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. It's not that Master is ambitious, but Master has no choice but to establish a country. Xiao Hua then recounted what he had seen and heard in the Shao country, as well as how Xiong Yi and the others had captured the country's ruler. In the end, he said, instead of letting those Confucian cultivators or Grand Mist Ancestors subordinates take advantage of the Shao country, it's better for our fortune gate to do it ourselves. Moreover, didn't Master say it earlier? Xiong Yi and Li Xiang are fortune gate's outer disciples, and you are fortune gate's inner disciples. Not to mention you, even your subordinates are stronger than Xiong Yi and the others. How do you expect outer disciples to interact with inner disciples? I can imagine how awkward it must be for Li Xiang and Prince Lan to sit on these two chairs in front of me when I'm not around. But if I ask you to sit on this chair, you definitely won't be willing. Therefore, Master has decided to send the outer disciples to the Shao country. And Master's plan is good. Fu Jiwen nodded. One is the Shao country, the hidden immortal mainland's first Dao empire, and the other is the soaring Dragon Mountain Range, the hidden immortal mainland's first Dao sect. They can support each other and develop together. Master. Bai and couldn't help but ask, Master, how do you plan to find the immortal palace? Listen carefully, you'll know soon. Xiaohua smiled, then asked Fu Jiwen, how many imperial preceptors will there be in the Yaotai meeting this time? I'm not sure about that. Fu Jiwen shook his head and said, after I returned to the mountain, I read the information of the Luo Yi Business Alliance. It seems that the last time, there were 1,200. This time, there will be fewer, but there should be about 800. Why are there so many? Xiaohua asked curiously. Back then, Master had snatched 1 out of 10, and racked his brains. The calamity in the hidden immortal continent has affected the kingdom of Taoism. Almost every day, the kingdom of Taoism is destroyed. Moreover, the interval between the Jadestage gathering has been long. Naturally, there will be more lots for the state master. Fu Jiwen said with a smile, however, Master, isn't it better to have more lots for the state master? Master still can't find the way to the immortal palace with these 800 lots? Hearing this, Bai Ben finally understood. Xiaohua's idea was really incredible, but it was very feasible. Since the kingdom of Taoism had to be worshipped when the kingdom of Taoism was established, the lot of the state master had to return to the Soul Official Hall. The Soul Official Hall was in the immortal palace, so following the lot of the state master would naturally lead to the immortal palace. Of course, 1 lot of the state master might not be enough, but what about 10? What about 100? What about 1,000? With Xiaohua's strength as a human Mahayana stage cultivator, he could definitely find the way to the immortal palace. In this way, Xiaohua could step into the immortal palace's Nantian gate without relying on any information or contacting Wen Chu. Master. Disciple. Really admires you. Bai and said, only Master can become a human Mahayana stage cultivator. Unlike some people, who know. But don't say it. After saying that, Bai and pinched Fu Jiwen's waist. Fu Jiwen didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly responded with an ouch, to show that he had received Bai An's anger. Xiaohua looked at the young couple, and after a while, he said, Bai An used to be an immortal official of the immortal palace, so he has considered some things more comprehensively. Jiwen and Bai An, think about this more carefully. We will set off for the Yaotai mountain in 10 days. Yes, Master. Fu Jiwen and Bai An bowed and agreed. Also, Jiwen, you take Bai An and your disciples back to the Shenhua continent. Let Bai An take over Xiong Yi's matter and investigate the culprit behind the Shao country's Confucian cultivators. You will organize the 100,000 Fortune Gate disciples and accompany Master to the Yaotai mountain. Yes. Fu Jiwen agreed and left Bai An in the Fortune Dao Palace while he went to gather his disciples. Bai An, tell Master about Princess Xian. Xiaohua smiled and said, she never mentions anything about the immortal palace. This. Feng Xiu was a little embarrassed and said, Master, let's talk about this after you rescue Her Highness. After all, this disciple doesn't know what Her Highness wants to say. If this disciple says something wrong, Her Highness will punish this disciple. All right. Xiaohua also knew that it was difficult for Yancheng. After pondering for a moment, he asked, oh right, back then when Master met Princess Xian, she was only around the 4th grade of essence energy. It seems like her strength back then was not comparable to yours. Why is that? At the mention of this, anger immediately appeared on Bai An's face. He said fiercely, isn't it all because of Princess Qing Qing of the Jasper Flower Palace? Bai An then told him about Princess Qing Qing's plot to frame Princess Xian. In the end, he said, Princess Qing Qing is injured and her cultivation is not fully recovered. I heard from the maidservants of the school of the Emperor Star that they once begged the princess to report this matter to the Emperor Immortal. However, the princess felt that the Emperor Immortal was too busy with government affairs and was troubled by the matters of the four great clans. If she told the Emperor Immortal would be even angrier, so she didn't say anything. At that time, the princess probably wanted to avoid Princess Qing Qing, so she descended to the lower realm. Hearing this, Xiaohua was stunned. He seemed to have thought of something. He looked deeply at Bai En and said, Bai En, didn't Xian tell you why she went to the Saint River in the Western Paradise? No. Bai En asked curiously, why did Her Highness tell this disciple this? Xiaohua said word by word, when Master met Princess Xian in the Western Paradise, she had invited a Buddhist disciple who was proficient in heaven's feet. She also wanted to invite a Taoist cultivator who was proficient in water escape and formations to the Xianshui Palace at the bottom of the Saint River to save a nephew of hers. She also said that this nephew of hers was suppressed in the Xianshui Palace. How is that possible? Bai En didn't care and said casually, Her Highness's nephew. However, at this point, Bai En suddenly froze. The details of her time with Princess Xian suddenly appeared in her mind. Bai En immediately understood. Wasn't the nephew that Princess Xian was talking about her? Bai En had never thought that a descendant of an immortal emperor would risk her life to save her in an unknown place when she was seriously injured. Just for that possibility alone. Princess Xian. Bai En knelt on the ground and cried as she kowtowed to the sky. Even if this servant's body is smashed to pieces, this servant will still save you from the heaven's punishment prison crystal. Otherwise, this servant won't be able to repay your love for me. Sigh. After Bai En finished crying and kowtowing, Xiaohua helped Bai En up and said, Xian is always so considerate of others. She treats you the same way as Master. After hearing so much, she didn't tell you or Master about it. This is the bearing of an immortal emperor's princess. Whether it's you or Master, we can't let her down. Of course, the heavenly Tao is fair as well. If she didn't save you, I'm afraid you wouldn't have been banished to the lower realm to save her. Master, I don't want to eliminate any karma. Momo stopped crying, looked up at the sky, and said, I just hope that Master can go to the immortal palace and force out the princess's whereabouts. Teach the arrogant immortal palace a lesson, as well as those immortal officials who hurt the princess. After a while, Fujiwen returned with his disciple. He looked at Bai An's increasingly determined expression in bewilderment and did not ask any questions. Meanwhile, Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror and sent them all into the Shenhua continent. Then, he closed his eyes and meditated. The Yaotai Mountain was still the Yaotai Mountain. For thousands of years, that bluestone peak was like a jade tablet worshipping an immortal palace. It stood between the heavens and the earth, regardless of whether the wind blew or the rain fell, regardless of whether the wind was biting cold. Not to mention that Xiaohua had left for more than 300 years, it was like a blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, nothing had changed on Yaotai Mountain. The mountain was still the same mountain, and the water was still the same water. Even under the Yaotai Mountain, there were still some tents in a radius of nearly 100 miles. Around these tents, there were still many soldiers and generals in bright armor. Those monarchs who were recruiting Tao cultivators were also waiting respectfully for them. However, the current Yaotai Mountain was different from before. Snowflakes were fluttering in the sky, and these snowflakes were different from most places in the hidden immortal continent. The snowflakes were the size of a palm, and looked like white cranes. As the snowflakes fluttered in the air, they danced along the protrusions on both sides. It was very beautiful. However, when the snowflakes fell to the ground, it could be seen clearly. Rather than saying that these snowflakes looked like white cranes, they looked more like two palms of yaoju flowers. The yaoju flower was a kind of flower that ordinary Confucian cultivators in the hidden immortal continent liked. The yaoju flower was pure white in color, and had a kind of faint fragrance without makeup. It symbolized the noble and virtuous conduct of Confucian cultivators. Moreover, the petals of the yaoju flower were not round. Instead, they were folded together, just like how Confucian cultivators put their hands together when they saluted. When the wind blew, the yaoju flower swayed as if it was saluting someone. This was the real reason why Yaotai Mountain was famous in the secular world. Chapter 45-90. The strangest thing was that when the snowflakes fell from the Yaotai Mountain, whether it was on the ground or on the mountains, before the snowflakes melted, the closed palms were all facing the same direction. No one knew whether that direction was where the immortal palace was located or not, but everyone knew that even if it wasn't that direction. Was it after the Yaotai Mountain became famous? Yaoju snow covered the sky and covered the mountains. In this heavy snow, there were thousands of Taoist cultivators standing quietly in the air. Their eyes flashed as they stared fervently at the Yaotai Mountain, waiting for the Yaotai gathering to begin. These cultivators were no different from the cultivators 300 years ago. Although they knew that this was the immortal palace's arrangement, they had no choice but to gather here and wait for an opportunity to survive and cultivate. However, in this group of cultivators, there was a mid-nascent soul cultivator who was different from the others. This cultivator had a handsome face and a tall figure. His face carried a kind of indifference and confidence. He didn't look at the Yaotai Mountain. Instead, he looked at the nascent soul cultivators in the distance from time to time, as if he was looking for something. Occasionally, a few nascent soul cultivators would notice his gaze and nod at him in acknowledgement. This cultivator was called Jiqingzi. He was from the Yan province's curved cloud pavilion and had entered the ranks of nascent soul cultivators 500 years ago. Moreover, Jiqingzi had also participated in the Yaotai Mountains gathering several hundred years ago. However, this Jiqingzi had the ability to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. When he attended the banquet held by Reverend Huada, he first raised his cup to Reverend Huada. Then, he was moved by Reverend Qing Su's words. The next day, when the Star Lord Palace's Hall Master Kong Hongwu took out the lot of 10 state preceptors, Jiqingzi was one of the first nascent soul cultivators to leave the Yaotai Mountain. Thus, Jiqingzi was one of the few nascent soul cultivators who escaped that disaster. Jiqingzi left the Yaotai Mountain and lost the opportunity to establish a country. If he wanted to cultivate, he had to find another way. Reverend Qing Su was naturally his first choice. After Reverend Qing Su left with a few gold core cultivators as a cover, Jiqingzi and a few other nascent soul cultivators caught up with Reverend Qing Su and became the Grand Mist Ancestor's subordinates. Taoist Master Qing Su was originally unhappy that he failed to recruit Xiao Hua, but when he saw Jiqingzi and other nascent soul cultivators coming over to pledge their allegiance, he was very happy. Soon after, he did not dare to stay in the vicinity of Yaotai Mountain and flew away with Jiqingzi. After that, they waited at several other places for the Dao Gates cultivators that they had arranged to meet before returning together to pay their respects to the Grand Mist Ancestor. Even though the Grand Mist Ancestor was cold by nature, he had absolute leadership skills when it came to developing his forces. He treated Jiqingzi and the others very well and was not stingy with their cultivation techniques, pills, and secret techniques. In the past 200 years, Jiqingzi, who had reached the end of his cultivation, broke through his bottleneck once again and reached the late nascent soul stage. He became Taoist Qing Su's right-hand man in one fell swoop. Previously, this Yaotai Mountain was the place where Qing Su Taoist often came to recruit people. Later on, when Qing Su Taoist left for the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, Jiqingzi was in charge of this place. This time round, apart from being in charge of recruiting Dao sect cultivators, Jiqingzi had also brought over 100 cultivators to snatch the lot of the imperial tutor. Looking at the fluttering Yaojukshu, Jiqingzi's gaze drifted away. The scene from several hundred years ago involuntarily appeared in his mind. AI, it said that fate makes fools of people. It's really so. Thinking back, that Taoist Wado was so full of energy at the banquet that I was completely convinced. But who knew? He was actually a pawn of the Star Lord Palace. The Yaotai Mountain gathering that time was also a rare danger. Fortunately, I reacted quickly and withdrew in time. If I had followed Daoist Wadda into Yaotai Mountain, would definitely have fallen on the Yaotai Mountain like those nascent soul cultivators. Less than 1 out of 10 would survive. This is something that has never happened before in the Yaotai Mountain gathering. Moreover, there are many mysteries in the Yaotai Mountain gathering that have not been solved even until today. Who killed the Star Lord Palace's Kong Hongwu? Even though some people suspect that it's my Grand Mist ancestor, he has always smiled without saying anything and has never admitted it directly. Who knows if he disdains to admit it, or denies it. After all, ambushing and killing a 5th level Essence Energy Grandmaster is really nothing much to him. Some people also say that it's an internal strife in the Immortal Palace. There are other forces in the Star Lord Palace. Otherwise, how could there only be 10 State Masters in the Yaotai Mountain gathering? It's clear that someone from the Immortal Palace set a trap for Kong Hongwu. Moreover, the Confucian cultivator hiding among the Daoist cultivators also killed several of Kong Hongwu's trusted subordinates one by one, bringing the entire Yaotai Mountain under his control. Of course, some people also say that it's Xiao Hua, Daoist Xiao, whose name is now more famous than the ancestor. But others may not know, but I saw Xiao Hua at the banquet that year. He was really only a nascent soul cultivator at that time. It seems that he wasn't Daoist Wadda's opponent. How could he possibly kill Kong Hongwu? Moreover, didn't the ancestor say at that time that Xiao Hua's strength was not enough to kill him? Xiao Hua's strength is not enough to kill Kong Hongwu. It must be the Immortal Palace's method. Perhaps the mastermind behind the scenes is the current Star Lord Palace's Palace Master Linghu Pihuan. Ji Qingzi had just thought of Linghu Pihuan when, rumble. The sound of beating drums resounded from the Yaotai Mountain. The sound of the drums was ear-splitting. The red clouds began to roll, and the snowflakes in the sky were shattered into pieces. Immediately, rays of golden light pierced straight down from the clouds, dyeing those snowflakes. Regardless of whether it was the snowflakes or the snowflakes, they all showed a kind of graceful luster. In this golden light, the red clouds in the sky began to gather in every direction. In no more than a moment, they again condensed into 28 enormous clouds. 28 brightly armored immortal generals appeared above the clouds. Ji Qingzi's gaze swept around. He already saw clearly that these immortal generals were the 28 star generals. They were different from the ones he had seen before. Let alone that Hornwood Dragon Linghu Pyron, Wellwood Dragon Shangguan Yeren, and Tail Fire Tiger Ouyang Jingran's appearances were different, even the other dozen star generals had changed. Immediately, many ceremonial guards spread out. Dressed in Confucian attire, wearing a tall crown on his head, and holding a jade tablet in his hand, the figure of Star Lord Palace's Palace Master Linghu Pihuan flew out from the Yaotai Mountain. Linghu Pihuan was the same as Kong Hongwu back then. His eyes wandered all around to look at the nearby Daoist cultivators. Afterwards, he raised the jade tablet with both hands and bowed towards the rising sun in the east, reciting, "My name is Linghu Pihuan. I have received the hidden immortal continent's Confucian cultivators' trust to control Star Lord Palace. Today is the day that Star Lord Palace opens the Yaotai Assembly. I, the 1,000-star generals, earnestly request the Confucian cultivators' past ancestors to permit me to open the Yaotai Mountain to hold the Yaotai Assembly." And similarly, there was no difference at all. Following Linghu Pihuan's words, ray after ray of awe-inspiring qi descended from the Yaotai Mountain. That awe-inspiring qi's color was extremely dazzling. Following this rainbow-like pillar of light, another imperial edict sparkling with golden light fell from the sky. However, just as Linghu Pihuan bowed, the instant he received the imperial edict, woo, woo. The sound of a gale's furious howl came from the distant horizon. The wind's howl in winter was originally normal, but before this howl, it unexpectedly shook all around. The heaven-earth origin energy within several tens of thousands of li seemed to be swallowed by a giant mouth as it flowed towards one place. Let alone that the crimson clouds and snowflakes in the sky were torn to shreds, even the rainbow-like pillar of light above the Yaotai mountain violently swayed in this gale. The previous world's might was practically swept clean. This. Linghu Pihuan was stunned, shame and anger appearing on his face. While he was inwardly astonished, he slowly straightened his body. The clear light in his eyes faintly flickered, wanting to look at the origin of the gale. It was also at this moment that the sound of thunder that soared to the sky rang out again. Countless thick, dragon-like thunderbolts descended from the sky, shrouding the distant horizon. Those streaks of lightning flickered, illuminating the entire sky. Wherever they passed, the auspicious aura of the Yaotai mountain and the rainbow-colored glow had long been covered. In front of this thunderbolt, the phenomenon that had just shocked the Daoist cultivators was like child's play. Fortune Gate. Linghu Pihuan didn't need to use the clear light at all. Seeing such a strange lightning, how could he not know what had happened? He looked at the place where the thunderbolt landed in astonishment. Seeing the flickering figures treading on clouds, he was truly puzzled in his heart. What are they doing at my Yaotai mountain? Of course, this thought was merely a flash, and Linghu Pihuan smiled bitterly again. Although the reputation of the Fortune Gate's disciples was currently unparalleled on the hidden immortal continent, the Fortune Gate's disciples were still Daoist disciples. What were they doing at the Yaotai mountain? Other than participating in the Yaotai mountain meeting, other than seizing the Grand Preceptor's lot. There didn't seem to be any other reason, right? However, the Fortune Gate had already braved the universal condemnation of the world's Confucian cultivators to establish a Daoist sect. Did they still care about establishing a Daoist sect? At the same time that Linghu Pihuan came to his senses, Ji Qingzi was also dumbfounded. Looking at the thunderbolt in the distance, he couldn't care less about hiding anything, and transmitted his voice to the other cultivators. Are they Fortune Gate's disciples? Could it be that they're also here to seize the Grand Preceptor's lot? Senior. A golden core cultivator who was closer to Ji Qingzi replied bitterly, if there's no accident, they should be. But. Ji Qingzi said, but, a few times, but he couldn't continue. He was even more bitter than that golden core cultivator. While these Daoist cultivators and the Confucian cultivators of the Yaotai Mountain Star Lord Hall were still in shock, in the distant horizon, 100,000 Fortune Gate's disciples clad in armor and holding magic treasures in their hands flew over in an orderly formation. The battle formation formed by these 100,000 disciples was the Golden Crow Immortal Slaying Demonic Formation. Thick bolts of lightning fell on the battle formation, turning into lightning that scattered around the disciples, entangling the clouds beneath the Fortune Gate's disciples' feet. From afar, the 100,000 disciples looked like a huge golden crow made of lightning, exuding an invincible aura. Damn it! Linghu Pihuan couldn't help but curse inwardly. Are they here to seize the Grand Preceptor's lot? Or are they here to destroy my Star Lord Hall? Chapter 4591. Just as Linghu Piming was at a loss on how to respond, a will like that of heaven and earth emerged from the battle formation and crashed down on the Yaotai mountain. Then, a tall and skinny figure that looked like a heavenly god flew out from the lightning, surrounded by lightning. Xiao Hua. When Linghu Piming saw this tall and thin figure, he actually felt a sense of relief. He held the Immortal Palace's imperial edict in his hand and watched Xiao Hua fly slowly, gathering all the light and darkness between heaven and earth on his body. He couldn't help but have mixed feelings in his heart. Linghu Piming knew more than Ji Qingzi, so he admired this enigmatic human race Mahayana realm even more. 300 years ago, he was the one who suggested Kong Hongwu recruit him, but 300 years later, he had become a supreme cultivator in the eyes of millions. Since Xiao Hua stood at the peak of human cultivation, then all the mysteries on the Yaotai mountain that day had been solved. However, who would dare to mention the Yaotai mountain gathering again? The thunder became louder and louder, and the lightning became more and more dazzling. The Fortune Gate disciples flew from the horizon to the side of the Yaotai mountain. The several thousand Dao cultivators didn't dare to be negligent. They all tidied up their clothes and prepared to greet Xiao Hua. The monarchs who were preparing to recruit Dao cultivators under the Yaotai mountain couldn't sit still in their tents and rushed out one by one. They didn't dare to approach and only stood respectfully on the ground, not daring to be slow in the slightest. As for the Star Lord Hall's immortal soldiers and immortal generals, where was their previous arrogance? They were quite embarrassed and nervously gripped their weapons. They looked at the Fortune Gate disciples and secretly glanced at Linghu Piming, afraid that Linghu Piming would give the order to attack. Just when Linghu Piming's mouth was dry, the lightning suddenly dimmed, and even the sound of thunder was annihilated. The 100,000 Fortune Gate disciples silently scattered in all directions, surrounding the Yaotai mountain. Linghu Piming had only casually swept his clear sight light over the Fortune Gate's disciple closest to him, and he couldn't help but shudder in fear. Late nascent soul realm cultivator, his grandma, an ordinary Fortune Gate's disciple, is already at the upper 4th grade of essence force. These 100,000 Fortune Gate's disciples can easily flatten my Star Monarch Hall. While Linghu Piliu was still feeling apprehensive, the 100,000 Fortune Gate's disciples stopped in midair, not making a sound. Xiao Hua also quietly stood in the distance, no longer approaching Yaotai Mountain. For a time, apart from the falling snow and the falling clouds, there was no other sound between heaven and earth. Seeing that the Fortune Gate disciples were motionless, Linghu Piming was embarrassed once again. If it was before Linghu Pimu received the imperial edict from the Immortal Palace, he could have flown in front of Xiao Hua and bowed respectfully, facing Xiao Hua with the etiquette of a junior. But now that he had the imperial edict in his hand and was representing the Immortal Palace, he couldn't go and greet Xiao Hua personally. However, it was impossible for Fortune Gate's disciples to come over. After all, they represented Xiao Hua and the Fortune Gate. Just like this, the awkwardness lasted for half a cup of tea's time. The Star Lord's Hall's Star Generals' backs were sweating. They were afraid that Xiao Hua would point her finger and these 100,000 Fortune Gate disciples would attack. Sigh. Linghu Piming turned to look at these Star Generals, pondering for a moment, then sighed in his heart. He urged his body to move, but at this moment, Fujiwen in front of Xiao Hua's body flickered. A strange rune appeared, and Fujiwen's figure crossed the sky and landed in front of Linghu Piming. I, Fujiwen, greets Hall Master Linghu. Fujiwen did not lack etiquette, cupping his hands respectfully. Linghu Piming let out a long sigh of relief. He raised the imperial edict in his hand and smiled. This Hall Master is now holding the Immortal Palace's imperial edict, temporarily considered as my Immortal Palace's envoy. Due to the Immortal Palace's etiquette, this Hall Master is unable to perform a full greeting. Please forgive me, fellow Immortal Fu. It's fine. Fujiwen did not mind and said, my sect master has decreed that my Fortune Gate's disciples wish to establish a country in Gun Province. According to the hidden Immortal Continent's customs, my Fortune Gate's disciples and other Dao sect's disciples have come to the Yaotai Mountain to participate in the Yaotai Mountain's assembly. Hall Master Linghu, please open the Yaotai Mountain's Dragon Gate according to the customs and place the Imperial Preceptor's lot in. Sigh. Zhiqingzi looked at Xiao Hua's familiar figure in the distance and sighed. If I had known earlier that Fortune Gate's disciples would come to take the Imperial Preceptor's lot, I wouldn't have come. In this world, which Dao sect's cultivator can compete with Fortune Gate's disciples? I only hope that Fortune Gate's disciples will stop before going too far and just take a few and leave the rest for I. I can also return and give an explanation to Ancestor Ah. Unfortunately, what happened next made Zhiqingzi feel like he had fallen into an ice cave. Linghu Piming probed, fellow Immortal Fu, may I ask how many Imperial Preceptors lots your sect needs? Fujiwen smiled and replied, no comment. After saying that, Fujiwen's figure returned to Xiao Hua's side. Since it's the Fortune Gate's Daoist Xiao who wants to establish a kingdom, this junior doesn't dare to compete. Before Fujiwen could land beside Xiao Hua, a golden core cultivator immediately bowed to Xiao Hua and left, not even leaving his name behind. Damn it. Zhiqingzi gritted his teeth. This cultivator is too opportunistic. Sure enough, after a short while, nearly 70% of the Tao sex cultivators bowed and left. There was no lack of mid-nascent soul cultivators among them. Zhiqingzi wanted to leave at this time, but he was afraid that the Grand Mist Ancestor would punish him, so he could only brace himself and stand in the air. Seeing that more and more Tao sex cultivators were leaving, Linghu Piming was also a little flustered. He did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly circulated his true qi to open the imperial edict. Rumble. The sound of a tide came from the imperial edict, just like before. Roar. A loud dragon's roar came from the tide, and soon after, a 10,000 zhang long yellow light rushed into the air. The yellow light was like a dragon leaping into the sky, dancing in the colorful light for a while before lying down on the Yaotai mountain. An indescribable dragon's might and authority weighed down on the surroundings even more than the Yaotai mountain. Unfortunately, today was destined to be different from previous years. Just as this dragon's might and authority rushed out of the Yaotai mountain and landed on the Fortune Gate's disciples, a light cough like a thunder formation sounded, and the space within 100 li of the Yaotai mountain immediately shattered. Tens of millions of lightning threads poured out from this space, and all of the dragon's might and authority were completely shattered by the yellow light like a dragon leaping into the air, scattering into pieces in the air. At this time, the voice that sounded like a big yellow bell reverberated between heaven and earth. By the will of the heavens, the hidden immortal ancestors congratulate each other. In today's enlightening Jade Pavilion Grand Meeting, the stars will. This voice was incomparably loud and dignified, but in the ears of Linghu Piming and the others, they couldn't help but bitterly smile and feel awkward in their hearts. Even in the ears of Zhiqingzi and the others, this voice was far less shocking than before, not to mention the effect of melting the foundation of their Tao. With great difficulty, the voice settled. Boom. A loud sound like a wave crashing into a mountain rock rang out, and the entire imperial decree slowly closed. The imperial decree once again fell into Linghu Piming's hands. If it was before, Linghu Piming just had to send the imperial decree into the sky, and the yellow dragon would transform into a dragon gate. Unfortunately, the yellow dragon had already been shattered by Xiaohua's cough, so how could there still be the auspicious sign of the yellow dragon transforming into a dragon gate? Linghu Piming was also helpless, and he still sent the imperial decree out. The imperial decree was like a meteor that soared into the sky, and crashed into the sky. A huge black hole flickered, and a golden frame appeared. Xiaohua's figure moved, and then he stopped. A wisp of Buddhist consciousness appeared, and disappeared along with the imperial decree into the black hole. At the same time, a splendor that was even more dazzling than the sun rushed out from the black hole. As everyone slightly closed their eyes, a somewhat damaged dragon gate appeared on the Jade Mountain. Linghu Piming hastily flew to the front of the dragon gate, raised his hand, and took out several jade boxes from his wide sleeve. He stole a glance at Xiaohua, and said in a slightly loud voice, "Fellow immortals, these are several treasures that my Star Lord Hall has prepared for this Jade Pavilion Grand Meeting. If any fellow immortals are fated, feel free to look for them in the Jade Pavilion Grand Meeting." After he finished speaking, Linghu Piming did not explain what was inside these jade boxes. He raised his hand and sent them into the dragon gate. Several colored carps swallowed them, and just like before, they disappeared without a trace. Finally, Linghu Piming waved his sleeve again, and several hundred rays of multicolored light rushed out. Several hundred fist-sized, somewhat similar to the imperial scholar's lot, flew out. Linghu Piming coughed and said, "These are the 483 imperial scholars' lot for this year's Jade Pavilion Grand Meeting. My Star Lord Hall will place them within the winnowing basket water leopard, 3 water ape, and chariot water worm's 10-star arrays." Hastily saying this, Linghu Piming waved his hand. Several hundred dragon roars came from the Swanni Imperial Jade Seal. The Swanni outside the Imperial Jade Seal seemed to come alive, roaring as it brought a yellow cloud into the dragon gate and disappeared. Linghu Piming was finally relieved. He bowed towards Gao Tian and saluted, "Thank heavens for your kindness, the ceremony is complete." Immediately after, the 28 star generals looked at each other. Some star generals' faces were filled with joy, some with bitterness, and even more with schadenfreude. One by one, they urged their magic clouds to descend into the Jade Mountain. Everyone. Fujiwen saw all the star generals leave, loudly shouting, "Enter the array, take all of the 483 national preceptors' lots." Yes. The Fortune Gate's disciples' auras were like rainbows, and as they answered in unison, the damaged Dragon Gate swayed twice. Seeing the 100,000 Fortune Gate's disciples enter the Dragon Gate one by one like lightning, Zhiqingzi and the other Dao sex cultivators no longer dared to hesitate. They all turned their heads towards Xiaohua and cupped their fists, urging their figures to leave. Although the 483 imperial scholars' lot was not a small number, enough to establish 483 Dao sex countries on the hidden immortal continent, Zhiqingzi and the others did not doubt that with the Fortune Gate strength, establishing 483 countries would be a piece of cake. After Zhiqingzi and the others left, Linghu Piming tidied his clothes and flew in front of Xiaohua. He bowed and said, "Junior Linghu Piming has come to greet Daoist Xiao." Junior was previously holding the Immortal Palace's imperial decree, so it was inconvenient for Junior to salute. Now, Junior has specially come to ask for forgiveness, cast a monthly vote, cast a recommendation vote, bookmark, gift, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 4592. Amen. Xiaohua nodded slightly, glancing at Linghu Piming saying, "I know. You don't need to mind." Linghu Piming said with a flattering smile, "Then Junior can rest assured. Apart from asking for forgiveness, Junior also wants to ask Senior. If Senior wants to establish a country, Senior only needs one imperial preceptor's signature. Furthermore, if Senior were to establish over 400 Daoist kingdoms at once, it would bring about endless trouble." Xiaohua looked at Linghu Piming and said with a smile, "Hall Master Linghu, do you want to know the reason?" "Yes, Senior. If Senior can give pointers, Junior will be endlessly grateful." Linghu Piming said with a nod. "I can tell you. However, you have to tell me something first." Xiaohua's gaze landed on Linghu Piming. That lightning-like gaze caused Linghu Piming to be alarmed, seemingly thinking of something. He hesitated slightly and said in a low voice, "If it doesn't involve the Immortal Palace's secrets, Junior will definitely report truthfully." "Sure enough," Xiaohua asked, "you tell me why there were only 10 Imperial Preceptors' signatures in that Jadestage summit that I participated in back then. Why did the entire Jadestage mountain set up 3 grand formations all at once? What exactly was your goal in hunting my Dao sex nascent soul cultivators?" Linghu Piming had a headache and said with a flattering smile, "Senior, this Junior is aware of the problem that you spoke of, but I also know very little. Furthermore, this Junior also really doesn't dare to reveal anything to Senior. Senior, please understand." If Linghu Piming kept evading, Xiaohua might use some divine ability to search Linghu Piming's memories. But Linghu Piming was so calm, Xiaohua couldn't make things difficult for him either. However, after Xiaohua pondered slightly, he asked again via voice transmission, "Linghu Piming, since that's the case, then I won't force you either. I'll ask you another matter that doesn't involve the Immortal Palace's secrets." Linghu Piming frowned, even more puzzled. Since it wasn't the Immortal Palace's secrets, why didn't Xiaohua ask but instead voice transmission? However, he didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly replied via voice transmission, "Senior, please speak. As long as Junior knows, I'll definitely say everything I know." Star Lord Hall's previous Hall Master Kong Hongwu, whose trusted aide is he? Xiaohua's eyes were fixed on Linghu Piyu, carefully observing the changes in his expression. When Linghu Piming heard this question, he immediately let out a sigh of relief. With a smile, he transmitted his voice, "Senior, on the surface, Palace Master Kong Hongwu is a trusted aide of Lord Sun Peng of the Hall of Enlightenment. However, according to what I know, this Hall Master Kong is also a member of the Heaven and Earth faction." Heaven and Earth Gate? You are a Dao Gate's Grand Ascension Stage expert. Ah. A Tao Gates Grand Ascension stage expert cannot go to the Immortal Palace? Xiao Hua sneered, what kind of rule is this? But. Linghu Piming was somewhat speechless. No one could forbid a Tao Gates Grand Ascension stage expert from going to the Immortal Palace, not even Immortal Emperor Go Chen. But the problem was that the Immortal Palace's Confucian cultivators and Tao Gates cultivators were enemies. Xiao Hua, a Tao Gates Grand Ascension stage expert, was swaggering around the Confucian cultivators' Immortal Palace, not provoking them. At this moment, Linghu Piming suddenly realized something and exclaimed, I understand, Senior, you want to use the Imperial Preceptor's lot to go to the Immortal Palace? Correct. Xiao Hua glanced sideways at the Jade Mountain's Dragon Gate. At this moment, that Dragon Gate was shaking, and Fortune Gate's disciples had already begun to rush out. 100,000 Fortune Gate's disciples were pressing down on the Jade Mountain. Not to mention a dozen star arrays. Even if the entire Jade Mountain was opened and the 3 star arrays were placed on the Jade Mountain, the Star Lord Hall's star generals wouldn't dare to go overboard and stop these fierce generals. After the first Fortune Gate's disciple flew out, even more Fortune Gate's disciples rushed out. These Fortune Gate's disciples all flew in front of Fujiwen, and after handing over the Imperial Preceptor's lot, they stood in midair. Can Junior take his leave now? Seeing that more than 400 disciples had already flown out, Linghu Piming's face flushed red. This was the shortest Jade Pavilion assembly in history, and if there were no accidents, there wouldn't be such a short record in the future. Go. Xiao Hua nodded, you can report this matter to the Immortal Palace. Many thanks, Senior. Linghu Piming bowed and hurriedly flew into the Jade Mountain. In the time it took to exchange a few words, Fujiwen looked at the Imperial Preceptor's lot that he had put into his cosmos sack and flew over. The Fortune Gate's disciples that flew out from the Jade Mountain no longer looked at Fujiwen, and all flew in midair in formation. Master. Fujiwen passed the cosmos sack to Xiao Hua and said, there are 483 Imperial Preceptor's lots, not one less. Good. Xiao Hua received the cosmos sack, and his divine sense swept over it. He took out a lot and said, let this disciple bring this back to the Soaring Dragon Mountain range and give it to His Highness Lan. Let him establish the Shao country. Yes, Master. Fujiwen took the Imperial Preceptor's lot and flew into the distance. After giving a few instructions, the disciple took the Imperial Preceptor's lot and flew away. Chapter 4593. Swoosh. In the distant sky, an obscure energy fluctuation flashed and rushed towards the horizon, disappearing in an instant. If he guessed correctly, it should be Linghu Piming sending a message to the Immortal Palace. Humph. Xiao Hua snorted coldly, inwardly thinking, 1 day in the heavens, 1 year on Earth. The Immortal Palace is obviously inside a space-time vortex. Even if Linghu Piming's message reaches the Immortal Palace, as long as it breaks through the time barrier, time will immediately slow down. Before this message reaches the High Cloud Hall, this Shao will have arrived. This kind of message. What use is it? After waiting for half an incense stick's time, the Fortune Gate's disciples finally came out from the Dragon Gate. When the last disciple passed through the Dragon Gate, Linghu Piming's figure flickered a few times inside the Dragon Gate as if he was bowing to Xiao Hua. Then, with a loud bang, the Dragon Gate closed from top to bottom, and the thousands of colorful carps turned into dragons and disappeared into the void. All the golden lights disappeared at the same time, and the snowflakes that resembled the jade juju flower once again fluttered down, covering everything under the cover of time. Xiao Hua stared at Yao Jushue for a moment, then waved his hand and took out the Kunlun mirror. A beam of light swept over all the Fortune Gate's disciples and sucked them into the Shenhua continent. Soon after, Xiao Hua took out an Imperial Preceptor's lot from his Qinkuan pouch. As he activated his magic power, a crackling sound rang out. The restrictions on the surface of the Imperial Preceptor's lot were all broken. As Xiao Hua raised his hand and pointed at the Bai an angry howl was heard. The Bai turned into an ordinary jade seal, and the Bai An's shadow condensed from inscriptions soared into the sky and flew to a place like lightning. Even someone as strong as Xiao Hua did not dare to be careless. He released his divine sense and hurriedly chased after the phantom. After Xiao Hua was far away, Linghu Piming walked out from the Yaotai mountain. He smiled wryly as he looked at the various countries' monarchs who were preparing to leave. Looking at the excitement on their faces, he sighed, "Granny, I'm afraid this old man will become a laughingstock in the future." However, after Linghu Piming finished sighing, he looked at the direction Xiao Hua disappeared in, and muttered to himself thoughtfully, "But if there are too many laughingstocks, and even the immortal palace becomes a laughingstock, then will a laughingstock still be a laughingstock?" Xiao Hua naturally wouldn't care about who became the laughingstock. As he urged the lightning evasion technique to chase after the state preceptor's lot, he inwardly pondered, "Today, I gained a lot on Yaotai Mountain. I'm afraid that Linghu Piming would never have thought that he would personally tell this Xiao a great secret. I obtained the Jojo Cauldron from Kong Hongwu's Qinkuan bag, and it was because of the Jojo Cauldron that I was sent to the heavenly prison. Therefore, the master behind Kong Hongwu should be the same as Sun Cheng and Sun Hao's master. They should be from Tianji Palace. Not the so-called patrol envoy. Sun Jian had returned to the Immortal Palace for so long, but there was still no news of him finding Sun Hao. Sun Hao had probably found out and had hidden himself long ago. Although this Xiao didn't have time to ask by and about Tianji Palace, as long as this Xiao arrives at the Immortal Palace and transmits this matter to Sun Jian, wouldn't the truth be revealed? While Xiao Hua was pondering, the state preceptor's lot had already disappeared. Xiao Hua had no choice but to once again activate another state preceptor's lot. The state preceptor's lot once again gave birth to a shadow. This shadow flew in a different direction from the previous one, so Xiao Hua had to change direction again to chase after it. In this way, after nearly 100 state preceptor's lots were used up, Xiao Hua arrived at a somewhat strange place. However, he saw that near this space, his divine sense couldn't pass through, as if it was blocked by mud. Moreover, not only was there no heaven and earth origin qi near this space, even the righteous qi couldn't be seen. When Xiao Hua flew, his figure was stretched extremely long, and the sound of the lightning evasion also began to become hoarse. Xiao Hua had previously passed through the time turbulence, so he knew that he should have arrived near another time turbulence. Although he hadn't entered the time turbulence yet, the fragments of the time rules had already begun to interfere in the nearby time turbulence. Xiao Hua stood in the space, but he wasn't in a hurry to take out the state preceptor's lot. He raised his hand and patted his forehead, and the delusion breaker Dharma eye between his eyebrows opened. Sure enough, in the delusion breaker Dharma eye, Xiao Hua's surroundings were filled with thread-like fluctuations. These fluctuations were dark in color, and as they overflowed, there was a kind of extremely faint cloud in the air. The cloud and mist not only blocked divine sense, but also could cover the delusion breaker Dharma eye. Xiao Hua flew for a while, dodging these clouds and mist, and he could see clearly again. In the distant darkness, there were hundreds of dark green little dots flickering in the darkness. These little dots were like sesame seeds, and couldn't even compare to the brilliance of ordinary fireflies. I'm afraid this is a maze. Xiao Hua's hand pinched his chin as he thought to himself. Soon after, he activated another state preceptor's lot. Whoosh! The shadow flew out, turning into a yellow inscription and rushing into one of the little dots. Xiao Hua hurriedly used the lightning escape technique to chase after it. When he got closer, Xiao Hua discovered that the dark green dot had actually turned into a whirlpool that was thousands of feet wide. This whirlpool was spinning rapidly, and it looked very slender inside. A dark fluorescent light was emitted from the whirlpool. Xiao Hua's figure fell into the vortex. That vortex didn't produce any suction force, and when Xiao Hua's figure moved, his entire figure was stretched and squashed, turning into a strange light and shadow that fell into the vortex. In Xiao Hua's eyes, the entire vortex was pitch black, and even that dark green color couldn't be seen. Only a series of memories, like light and shadow, appeared in Xiao Hua's mind, and then quickly disappeared. After flying for the time it took to eat a meal, Xiaohua felt that he had been stretched into a line. His head was the head of the line, and his voice was the tail of the line. His entire body pierced through this vortex. A moment later, Xiaohua saw a five-colored light appear, and it seemed that the entire vortex had reached its end. At the same time, the leg that was far away in the vortex appeared below Xiaohua's body faster than teleportation. As for the state preceptor's lot, it had already flown to who knows where. Xiaohua continued to move towards the five-colored clouds. When he got closer, Xiaohua was once again shocked. Because in front of him, in the seemingly endless space, a huge vortex formed by five-colored clouds had enveloped the entire space. The colors of the vortex formed by the five-colored clouds were clear. One layer wrapped around the other, and one layer wrapped around the other. In the end, no one could tell which color was mixed with which. Other than the five colors that filled the eyes, there was only five colors. And above this vortex, there was a huge five-colored torch that filled the entire space. It was impossible to see the size of this five-colored torch with the naked eye. The five-colored vortex was spinning, and the five-colored torch was also spinning. Although it looked like it was spinning slowly, in Xiaohua's delirium eyes, there was a feeling of heaven and earth spinning in Xiaohua's mind. Xiaohua didn't dare to look any longer and hurriedly looked around the torch. He saw that every time the torch rotated, there would be some multicolored light and fluctuations flying out of the torch. These multicolored light and fluctuations flew into the surrounding space and set off ripples of multicolored light. Within these ripples, the laws of time were actually pervasive. Inside this five-colored vortex should be the immortal palace. Xiaohua thought to himself, and slightly narrowed his delirium eyes that were already swollen with pain. Xiaohua didn't dare to rush in recklessly, and still took out another Imperial Preceptor's lot. Whoosh! As Xiaohua expected, just as the Imperial Preceptor's lot phantom flew out, a halo immediately flew out of the five-colored vortex. This halo landed on the Imperial Preceptor's lot phantom, and transformed into an even smaller vortex. At the mouth of this vortex, the Imperial Preceptor's lot phantom fell into this vortex, and didn't appear again. Xiaohua closed his delirium eyes. The space around Xiaohua was similar to the void, and there was nothing special about it. Xiaohua urged his body to fly towards the Imperial Preceptor's lot phantom. But after flying for 1,000 feet, Xiaohua felt the space begin to slowly vibrate, and then the space separated into layers. The layers began to move up and down, and his body also moved along with the space, leaving behind a seemingly solid phantom in each layer of space. Moreover, these phantom layers began to extend and stretch. When there were more than 1,000 of these phantoms, there was a loud bang, and a layer of space in front of Xiaohua's head gave birth to a five-colored cloud, blocking Xiaohua's path. Layers of cobweb-like inscription chains overflowed in the cloud, and a loud sound came from the crisscrossing inscription chains. A majestic and shocking aura was also born from the inscription chains. Xiaohua understood that it was time to verify his identity here. He didn't have a token of the immortal palace, so if he wanted to pass, he could only force his way through. Therefore, Xiaohua didn't hesitate. His right hand clenched into a fist, and wisps of lightning condensed on the surface of his fist, converging into a net, and thumb-sized talismans flashed with a mysterious golden light in the lightning. As Xiaohua's right fist swung out, the space for several miles around him began to wrinkle, and layers of world's origin chi seeped out from the wrinkles, turning into fist-sized crystals that fell into the lightning. Roar! The lightning turned into a dragon, and with the power of space, it rushed into the blockade of the inscription chains with unparalleled force. The lightning was like a supreme will, and the chains were like strict order. When the will met the order, a loud bang sounded. Wherever the lightning passed, the chains were broken, and the thousands of scattered inscriptions were destroyed as soon as they touched the powerful lightning, turning into pure awe-inspiring chi. In the awe-inspiring chi, the lightning became more vigorous and constantly grew stronger. Although more and more inscription chains waved like tentacles, trying to seal the lightning, all the chains were defeated in just a moment. Seeing a hole of 1,000 feet in size appearing in the blockade of the inscription chains, Xiaohua urged his figure to calmly pass through it. Xiaohua's figure had just passed through the blockade, and in front of him was an immortal palace hidden by 5 colored clouds. A towering heavenly gate of 1,000 feet in size stood in front of Xiaohua. Unfortunately, before Xiaohua could see the heavenly gate clearly, he heard a roar, "Bold thief, you actually dare to trespass the heavenly gate of southern heaven, how dare you?" Chapter 45-94. Following this furious roar, an immortal general even larger than Qua Chong of the Sun Palace appeared in front of Xiaohua with 2 hammers the size of hills in his hands. Behind him, thousands of immortal soldiers flew over with weapons in their hands, wanting to surround Xiaohua. "This old man is Dao Gate's Xiaohua." Xiaohua looked at the immortal general flying over and stopped. He said indifferently, "Today, I came to the immortal palace to request an audience with immortal Emperor Gaochen. This old man has something to ask him, please return and report it to him." "Humph." The immortal general snorted and shouted, "Damned evil path, trespassing into the immortal palace is a capital offense. Hand over your life." As he spoke, the celestial general's body suddenly expanded. His mountain-like hammer streaked across the sky with a whoosh and smashed down like a meteor. A huge gust of wind enveloped the space around Xiaohua. Xiaohua frowned slightly. With a wave of his Daoist robe, an unparalleled force came out of his Daoist robe and collided with the hammer's force. The seemingly incomparably powerful hammer had a powerful momentum. With a wave of his Daoist robe, the space shattered and the force was annihilated. Even the hammer flew out like a piece of paper. The immortal general's body tumbled a few times in the air before he managed to stabilize himself. His face, which had been filled with arrogance earlier, was now filled with astonishment and surprise. As for the thousands of immortal soldiers, they were even more at a loss. They held their weapons and didn't know whether to surround or defend. Your Grand Mist Ancestor?" The immortal general shouted in shock. "You actually dare to cause trouble in the immortal palace, you. This old man is Dao Gate's Xiaohua." Xiaohua looked at the immortal general who didn't even know his name and said indifferently, "Quickly report to Lingyun Palace." Xiaohua. The immortal general was stunned at first, then his entire body trembled. He shouted in shock, Your Fortune Gate's Xiaohua? You also came to cause trouble in the immortal palace?" This old man didn't come to cause trouble in the immortal palace. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This old man has something to ask immortal Emperor Gaochen. Quickly go and report this. Phew. The immortal general heaved a long sigh of relief. He stood up, tidied up his armor, and mustered his courage. He cupped his fists and said, "I am the Southern Heavenly Gate's Guardian General, Kwa Yu. Greetings, Daoist Xiao." Xiaohua raised his hand. "Spiritual Master, please wait here for a moment. I will inform Heavenly King Fu Yu and ask him to make a decision." Kwa Yu saw Xiaohua's amiable face and asked tentatively. Of course, Xiaohua didn't mind. He nodded and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you." Kwa Yu was overjoyed. After bowing to Xiaohua, he gave a few orders to the immortal soldiers and rushed into the Southern Heaven Gate. After the immortal soldiers flew back to the Southern Heaven Gate, Xiaohua placed his hands behind his back and looked up at the lofty Southern Heaven Gate while sighing with emotion in his heart. He had never been to the Southern Heaven Gate before, but he felt a sense of familiarity when he looked at it. This was because he had seen the Southern Heaven Gate when he first came to the hidden immortal continent. However, that Southern Heaven Gate was in an illusion. He remembered that day at the Longevity Town, when Mo Jianli, Zhu Junfeng, and the others worked together to create an illusion of an immortal palace from a small vermilion gourd, which made Xiaohua truly admire it. Now, even though Xiaohua didn't see any heaven-suppressing martial or any golden-armored deities, the southern heavenly gate that was made of jade was exactly the same as the southern heavenly gate in the illusion. Back then, I only thought about how to recover my cultivation and how to step into the nascent soul stage. I never thought about seeing the real southern heaven gate. However, in just a few tens of thousands of years, I have already reached the peak of cultivation and was only one step away from ascending. Now, I am standing in front of the southern heaven gate to have a face-to-face conversation with the Confucian supremacy, Immortal Emperor Go-Chen. Thinking about it carefully, there is nothing more in the world than this. No matter how high one's goal is, no matter how big one's dream is, as long as one has the right direction, one can walk step by step, stand up when one falls, correct one's mistakes, as long as one has enough endurance, one will eventually reach the end of the road and see the realization of one's dream. What a pity. Although the southern heavenly gate shines with golden light and red light and emits purple mist, no matter how you look at it, it still looks a little cold. The Immortal Palace is Xian's Immortal Palace, and also Xian's home, but there is no Xian at the door. Even if it is endlessly auspicious, how can it compare to the Guozhuang house in my heart? Although the Guozhuang house is small, it has parents. Although they are poor, they have children in their hearts. It is 10,000 times better than this immortal palace with its strict immortal rules. Xian will definitely like it. The immortal soldiers looked at Xiaohua, who was as steady as Mount Tai, and their palms were sweating. They stared at Xiaohua, afraid that he would explode and hurt someone. However, how could they have known that Xiaohua's heart had already flown to the Guozhuang house? Woo-woo. Just as the immortal soldiers were in a state of shock, waves of vast energy rushed out from all directions of the immortal palace. Multicolored clouds also flew over from all directions of the immortal palace. At the same time, waves of baleful energy surged along with the clouds and energy pillars, quickly gathering inside the southern heaven gate. Thousands of cryptic fluctuations also emerged from the southern heaven gate and spread to the surrounding space. As these ripples spread out, strands of strange light appeared like swimming fishes, filling the space between Xiaohua and the southern heavenly gate. Humph. Xiaohua snorted coldly and withdrew his homesickness. His gaze fell on the light. He saw that the extremely nervous immortal soldiers at the southern heaven gate had already relaxed. They looked at Xiaohua with ridicule, as if they were looking at a fish that had walked into a trap. Boom boom. The southern gate of heaven shook like a cannon. Intense light flashed at the southern gate of heaven, and several huge inscription chains intertwined and rushed out. The inscription chains were like pythons. When the inscription chains flew out of the southern gate of heaven, they lined up in front of Xiaohua. Dozens of immortal generals wearing armor, holding halberds, whips, sabers, and swords, revealed themselves. Hey! The immortal general at the front raised his halberd and pointed at Xiaohua with the tip of the halberd. Ignorant demon, do you know where this is? Xiaohua looked at this immortal general from top to bottom. His expression did not change, he was simply too lazy to answer. Who would have thought that this immortal general would not give up? He still arrogantly shouted, "This is the immortal palace. Don't you know? It's one thing for you to be a frog in a well in the hidden immortal continent. We immortal generals did not receive the immortal emperor's order to conquer, so we turned a blind eye and pretended not to know. Today, you actually dared to provoke my southern heaven gate. If I don't teach you a lesson, do you really think you are crazy?" Xiaohua coldly swept his gaze over that immortal general. He slightly raised his hand and flicked his middle finger. A bolt of lightning appeared from Xiaohua's hand and shot out like an arrow. Before the immortal general could finish speaking, that bolt of lightning had already landed in front of him. The immortal general was shocked. He did not care about his sharp tongue and hurriedly waved his halberd. A righteous aura mixed with a sharp aura chopped towards the bolt of lightning. That immortal general's skill was also exceptional. He used the halberd's tip to hit the bolt of lightning. However, the seemingly invisible bolt of lightning hit the halberd. Boom. A loud sound rang out. That immortal general was as if he was struck by lightning. His entire body trembled and his halberd was sent flying. Ah! The immortal general turned pale with fright and hurriedly flew back. The immortal generals beside him also moved and blocked in front of him, guarding against Xiaohua's pursuit. Ignorant brat! Xiaohua coldly snorted and said, "Don't make this old man angry again, otherwise." Xiaohua did not finish speaking. He still stood proudly in front of the immortal generals with his hands behind his back. You! That immortal general stabilized himself and shouted, "Who are you?" Xiaohua unhappily glanced at this immortal general. He was too lazy to pay attention to this immortal general. He had a good temper. If he encountered the Grand Mist Ancestor, he would have taken this immortal general's life in one blow. Quick, form the golden jade sky lock great formation. Seeing that Xiaohua did not answer, that immortal general waved his hand and said, "Yes, General." Hearing the order, the immortal general on the left responded. He moved his body and began to form the formation. In just a moment, a great formation was arranged in the air. This great formation flashed with golden light. Lines of inscriptions that were dozens of feet thick intertwined and shuttled through each immortal general's body. Every immortal general's body in the formation emitted a clear light. This clear light was lustrous and pure like the blue sky. Every thick inscription that fell into the blue sky would reveal a lock. This lock had a mysterious inscription and a shocking aura surged out from it. What was special was that after every inscription rushed out from the edge of the Great Formation, it fell into the southern heavenly gate behind the Great Formation. The entire southern heavenly gate also transformed into a huge inscription that firmly protected the immortal palace. Bang! Seeing that the Great Formation was completed, that immortal general's confidence increased greatly. He pointed at Xiaohua and said, "Who are you? You dare to trespass into the immortal palace? Don't you know that this is a violation of the immortal law?" Xiaohua glanced at that immortal general. He did not want to answer, but when he thought about it, he came to find Immortal Emperor Go Chen to inquire about new information. He did not really want to attack the immortal palace. Even if he wanted to fall out with them, wouldn't that have to wait until the end? There was no need for him to rashly fall out with the immortal palace when the situation was unclear. Thus, Xiaohua replied indifferently, "This old man is Xiaohua of the Fortune Gate. Today, I came to the immortal palace to ask for an audience with Immortal Emperor Go Chen. All of you, quickly go and report this." Fortune Gate? Hearing Xiaohua speak, that immortal general was stunned. He looked around and asked with some surprise, "Did this general hear wrongly? When did the hidden immortal continent have a Tao cultivator sect?" I know. At the edge of the Great Formation, a few immortal generals came to their senses and shouted, "A few days ago, the mysterious Yellow Order updated the mysterious Yellow Order, and all the people on it are disciples of the Fortune Gate. Many of my Heavenly King Palace's generals lost to the Lunar Temple. Presumably, this Tao cultivator should be someone on the mysterious Yellow Order, right? Give it as a reward, and thank you for all your support." Chapter 4595. No wonder he's so arrogant. That immortal general still hadn't reported his name. Hearing his subordinate's explanation, he sneered, "Seems like he has some tricks up his sleeve." However, the so-called profound yellow list is a hunting list for us Confucian cultivators. Being on it doesn't necessarily bring you any glory. Xiaohua didn't reply. He merely looked on as the immortal generals stomped their feet like clowns. He knew that the Tao sect had been in decline for a long time, and these immortal generals had always been arrogant. Even though he was a grand ascension stage cultivator of the Tao sect, this news might not have reached their ears. Even if this news reached their ears, they would only treat it as a rumor. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. Not to mention, the immortal palace was different from the hidden immortal continent. The Fortune Gate's disciples purged the profound yellow list 50 years ago, and the Lunar Temple was defeated in the soaring Dragon Mountain range 50 years ago. In the eyes of these immortal generals, it was only a few dozen days ago. How could they know about his reputation on the hidden immortal continent? The immortal general was stunned by Xiao Hua's methods, but when he heard that Xiao Hua was a Fortune Gate disciple, he had a plan in his heart. He smiled and said, "The Lunar Temple's Sun Gu is an idiot. He snatched the immortal emperor's decree from my heavenly king palace and wanted to take advantage of it. Who would have thought that he would be defeated in a small soaring Dragon Mountain range? Now, I'll let Sun Gu see who is the #1 general below the heavenly king." With that, the immortal general raised his hand and shouted, "Generals, listen to my command." Humph. Xiao Hua couldn't take it anymore and snorted coldly. His voice was like a sharp needle that pierced into the immortal generals' minds. There's a saying in the mortal world that it's easy to meet the king of hell, but difficult to hide from the little ghosts. This old man just wants to meet immortal Emperor Go-Chen. Why can't I even enter the southern heavenly gate after waiting for so long? This old man has already told all of you. Don't make this old man angry, or you won't be able to bear the consequences. Hee hee. The immortal general sneered, "You're just a Tao Gate cultivator. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Do you think the master of the immortal palace, the supreme cultivator of the human race, is someone you can meet whenever you want? All right." When Xiao Hua heard this, he was truly helpless. He really didn't know who the person who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth was. However, he understood that if he didn't use some methods, who knew what kind of unpleasant words this immortal general who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth would say. Kill. This. How is this possible? The leading immortal general was dumbfounded, and the group of injured immortal generals were also dumbfounded. Xiao Hua continued, "The Lunar Temple's great general Sun Gu was personally defeated and captured by this old man's disciple, and I'm sure you Heavenly King Palace's generals don't know about this, right? That day, not only was Sun Gu captured by this old man's disciple, but also the 28 lunar mansions. The Lunar Temple knew the strength of my Fortune Gate, so they made a bet with your Heavenly King Palace's generals. Only deceived immortal generals like you would dare to come to the southern heavenly gate to stop this old man. Damn it, damn it." The immortal general came to his senses, and just as he was about to curse with gritted teeth, he saw a vast aura surging out from within the five-colored light of the southern heavenly gate, and a voice that sounded like a huge bell rang out, "Xiao Hua, you're really something. This king wants to see why the mysterious yellow proclamation does not contain your name." Following this voice, the entire immortal palace suddenly distorted, and even the light that came out of nowhere quickly dimmed. What was strange was that high up in the sky, a black and white dot of light clearly appeared. That black and white dot of light was not the sun and moon, but it was even more powerful than the sun and moon, and in an instant, the entire immortal palace's aura was more or less stolen. It was as if the entire space was set off by this black and white dot of light. Immortal Emperor Gao-Chen? Xiao Hua was shocked, and he raised his head to look at the black and white dot of light. That dot of light had not yet come close, but its aura had already sealed the space around Xiao Hua, and a kind of destructive force, a kind of almost supreme majesty, surged out from within that aura. This aura was so invincible, and in Xiao Hua's knowledge, only the master of the immortal palace could possess it. After a few breaths of time, the black and white dot of light had already formed two rays of light. One ray fell from the sky, and its light was blinding, covering the entire sky, and the other came from the ground, and it was incomparably dark, covering the entire ground. Xiao Hua suddenly came to his senses, and said in shock, "No, this is not immortal Emperor Gao-Chen. Although this aura is supreme, the will of imperial power is faint, and it is more like the power of a king with an army. If I'm not mistaken, this should be the master of the mysterious yellow token." Sure enough, Xiao Hua looked as far as his eyes could see, and behind the two rays of light, a several thousand zhang tall secondary body came whistling over. This secondary body was wearing a Confucian robe, and outside of the Confucian robe was a short armor. The inscriptions on the Confucian robe were overflowing, and the golden light on the short armor was flickering, illuminating half of the sky. Looking at the secondary body's head again, it was wearing a crown, and the auspicious aura on the crown covered the secondary body's appearance. Pictures of battles on the battlefield flashed out from the flowing auspicious aura. Under the crown was not auspicious aura, but two rays of light, which were precisely the light and darkness. These two rays of light were completely different in color, and they were like two huge dragons. Not only were they cruising around the secondary body, but they were also crashing into the surrounding space, landing on the secondary body by a fluke. Wherever the secondary body passed by, space swayed and almost collapsed. Countless majestic pillars of air rushed out from the folds of space and roared as they merged into the secondary body. Layers of dragon roars and tiger roars came from the secondary body's large strides. Heh heh. Xiao Hua sneered. With a shake of his arms, ka-cha-cha. Rumbling sounds rang out everywhere. Countless lightning-like crystal lights surged out from the void and crazily landed on Xiao Hua's body. At the same time, thunderous rumbles came from Xiao Hua's body. These thunderous rumbles resonated with the thunderous rumbles, and they shattered the layers of space that were previously sealed by the two rays of light. Just as the space shattered, Xiao Hua also transformed into his transcendence golden body that was tens of thousands of feet tall. The golden body was surrounded by lightning, and tiny threads of lightning were like dragons swimming around. They also roared angrily. Inside the shattered space, the majestic southern heavenly gate and the stunned immortal generals all turned into broken mirrors and scattered in the darkness. In the entire space, there seemed to only be light and lightning. Roar. The person who came roared, louder than the creation of the world, and the light curtain of the entire space shone brightly. The person who came didn't seem to have any posture, but he suddenly raised his arm. At this time, his arm was like a mountain range that floated in the clouds in the sky. This mountain range had two colors. The light was like the mountains that were folded by the sunlight, and the darkness was like an endless abyss. Where the arm landed, the light and darkness fell into the clouds that previously covered the sky. The entire space was suddenly sealed, and the light covered from top to bottom, and the darkness rolled from bottom to top. In the bright clouds, chains of inscriptions entangled and whipped down, and each inscription on each chain gave birth to a different chanting sound. This sound was sonorous and powerful, mighty and domineering, and an unparalleled majesty and spirit fell down. At the same time, countless sounds of weapons and horses rang out like a zither, shattering the space in front of Xiao Hua inch by inch. Inscriptions appeared in every inch of space, isolating the heaven and earth yuan qi. In the dark clouds, there were also chains of inscriptions, but these chains of inscriptions were different from before. They were all sawtooth, and on the sawtooth of each chain, there was a faint bloody light. Each sawtooth of each chain was also composed of many inscriptions. These inscriptions were dark in color, mixed with the color of blood. These inscriptions also gave birth to chanting sounds, but this sound was flattering, and mixed with wailing. An indescribable softness and coldness gushed out, shaking the space under Xiao Hua's feet into a sticky, venom-like slurry. Streaks of heaven and earth yuan qi crystals fell into this slurry space and instantly turned into nothingness. Chapter 4596. Seeing that the entire space had been sealed and all life had been crushed, Xiao Hua did not panic at all. He shouted, "Good timing." Then, Xiao Hua rubbed his hands together, and streaks of lightning appeared between his hands like flowers blooming. This lightning was different from the lightning that Xiao Hua had used in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Not to mention that the Nine Heavens' divine thunder of the Daoist sect had become more powerful under the unstoppable thunderbolt technique. Even the triple light amplifying thunder that the Celestial had used the nine-colored hill to cultivate in the Star-Moon Palace flashed with a shocking light. Together with the other four types of lightning, it turned into a nine-colored lightning hand in the sky. As soon as this lightning hand appeared, billions of lightning bolts appeared in the sky. These lightning bolts were sharper than billions of flying swords. They fell into the light and dark clouds, piercing into the inscription chains and inscription teeth. Countless thunderous sounds covered everything in the space. The so-called sounds of pressure and desire all turned into sounds of decadence. The righteousness, majesty, and justice of the lightning enveloped the entire space. Whoosh! The lightning hand fell, and the inscription chains in the light clouds were torn apart. Sections of the chains burst in the lightning bolts, and the inscription teeth in the dark clouds were destroyed. The slurry space and the blood-colored inscriptions were instantly destroyed under the absolute power of life and death. Cracks appeared in the void instead. Ah! The person was slightly stunned and said in surprise, "You are actually so powerful? Who are you? Are all the people in the immortal palace nameless?" Xiaohua asked faintly as he activated his Dharma power and blocked the two-colored light with his lightning technique. Haha. The person laughed and also activated his true qi. The light and dark clouds tried their best to destroy the lightning hand. He said, "I am the master of the Tai Ching Palace. I really didn't expect that I would be able to meet a Taoist sect cultivator that I can fight for in my lifetime. Come, let me experience your Taoist sect techniques." As he spoke, there was a loud bang. Xiaohua's lightning hand shattered, turning into tens of thousands of lightning fragments that scattered down. The light and dark clouds that sealed the world were also torn apart by the power of life and death. The entire space was restored to its previous light, and in the distance, the majestic celestial palace was revealed once more. Hearing the person call himself the master of the Tai Ching Palace, Xiaohua sneered. He waved his finger, and a bolt of lightning like a sword pierced through the sky towards the master of the Tai Ching Palace. He shouted, "Who's afraid of you? I'll fight you for 300 rounds. Good. Good. Good." The palace master of the Tai Ching Palace called out 3 times in a row. His arm that was like a mountain waved again. As the clouds of light and darkness were activated, layer upon layer of mountains and seas of books condensed. Not only did they block Xiaohua's sword of lightning, they even crossed the void and surged towards Xiaohua. In just half a cup of tea's time, Xiaohua had already fought with the Grand Purity Palace's master several times. One of them was a newly ascended Mahayana Taoist, while the other was a Confucian cultivator who had been cultivating for many years. The other had a variety of Taoist magic arts, while the other was a Confucian cultivator who had stacked his methods. The other had the unparalleled power of thunder, while the other had the black-yellow vital qi, which was unrivaled in the world. The two of them really fought until the sky fell and the earth cracked, and the void shattered. Not only were the spatial hurricanes raging, but the qi of heaven and earth and the Great Spirit were also in chaos. Even in the shattered space, there was an uneven force of space that could destroy any mountain in the world. Looking at the southern heavenly gate, which was originally hidden in the light, it was now shaking greatly. The shadow of light folded and shattered several times. In the end, it barely managed to stand tall in the wild wind. The general of the Heavenly King Palace who rashly challenged Xiaohua had already lost his soul. He hurriedly commanded his subordinates to activate their true qi and rushed over to activate the Immortal Palace's defensive formation with the other guards. They did their best to resist the aftermath of the fight between the two supreme cultivators. In another half a cup of tea's time, the aftermath of the fight between Xiaohua and the master of the Tai Ching Palace had already passed through the southern heavenly gate and rushed towards the Immortal Palace. Inside the Immortal Palace, many defensive formations had already been activated. Countless clouds surged. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of immortal soldiers and immortal generals flew over from all directions. They either activated the defensive formations or set up defenses to prevent enemies from attacking the Immortal Palace. For a time, the immortal soldiers and immortal generals near the southern heavenly gate panicked. Not good, someone is charging into the Immortal Palace. Quick, quick, the 4 great families are attacking the Immortal Palace. No, it's the Taoist cultivators causing havoc in the Heavenly Palace. The immortal soldiers and immortal generals who had not been involved in war for a long time immediately exposed the drawbacks of their comfort. Although they were also setting up defenses and responding, some rumors had already begun to irresponsibly spread. Whether it was intentional or unintentional, they had long concealed the truth of the matter. The originally calm immortal palace actually began to become chaotic. Starting from the southern heavenly gate, it quickly spread to other places. Damn it! Sun Jian, who had just patrolled the Flower Medicine Palace, was greatly alarmed when he heard the news. He didn't have time to check if immortal Emperor Gaochen was in the Flower Medicine Palace. He cursed in a low voice and ordered an immortal soldier to land in front of the Flower Medicine Palace to report the news. He himself waved his three-pointed, double-edged saber and flew towards the southern heavenly gate with a group of Sun Palace soldiers. Sun Jian had only flown for a short while when another immortal soldier flew over with a message. Sun Jian carefully inquired and his face turned ashen. There was no other reason. There were only a few cultivators in the world who could fight evenly with the master of the Tai Ching Palace. And the only one who dared to attack the immortal palace was probably Xiao Hua alone. This is bad, this is bad. At this moment, Sun Jian was also somewhat alarmed. He stood in midair and frowned as he thought to himself, after all, Master Xiao attacked the immortal palace because of the immortal palace's attack on the soaring dragon mountain range. This is all my fault. I promised Master Xiao that I would mediate between them, but... Thinking of this, Sun Jian's frown loosened, and his face became resolute. Since this is caused by me, I can't back down. I'd better hurry to the southern heavenly gate and apologize to Master Xiao. Master Xiao hasn't entered the southern heavenly gate yet. Even if he violates the immortal palace's laws, I'll take responsibility for it. Thinking of this, Sun Jian urged his body to rush towards the southern heavenly gate. At this moment, the immortal soldier beside Sun Jian saw that Sun Jian was hesitating and hurriedly said, "General, you're new here and don't seem to be familiar with the immortal palace's rules. Although the Sun Palace is in charge of the immortal palace's safety, our responsibility lies within the immortal palace. As long as the Taoist sect's Mahayana hasn't attacked the southern heavenly gate, it's not our responsibility. If you force yourself to go now, you'll be inviting trouble. Not only will you bring disaster to the Sun Palace, but you'll also arouse the dissatisfaction of the Heavenly King Palace." "Shut up," Sun Jian said angrily. At this point, the Sun Palace and the Heavenly King Palace are already interdependent. Do you think Master Xiao just wants to see if the southern heavenly gate is sturdy? When Master Xiao kills his way into the southern heavenly gate, it'll be too late for us to stop him. But the immortal soldier argued, "General, the Taoist sect's Mahayana is fighting with the master of the Tai Ching Palace. Even if you want to, you're powerless. In my opinion, you might as well inform the immortal emperor, or the master of the Jade Pure Palace and the master of the Supreme Pure Palace." This. Hearing the immortal soldier's words, Sun Jian hesitated for a moment. He didn't want to use reporting as an excuse to shirk responsibility, but he was thinking about Xiao Hua's safety. After all, Xiao Hua was fighting with the master of the Supreme Pure Palace. Even if he didn't report to the immortal emperor, the masters of the Jade Pure Palace and the Supreme Pure Palace, they would definitely be attracted by the fight between the two. These three were all literary stars of the immortal palace. If the four of them attacked, Xiao Hua would definitely be defeated. Sun Jian paused for a moment, then turned his head and said, "Go, quickly inform the master of the literature palace." "Yes, General." The immortal soldier next to him was startled, then replied in a low voice, "General, aren't we going to inform the other masters of the two pure palaces?" Sun Jian glanced at the flickering light in the distance and replied, "The master of the Supreme Pure Palace is not in the immortal palace. We don't need to inform the master of the Jade Pure Palace. Just inform the master of the Literature Palace and let him assist the master of the two pure palaces." With that, Sun Jian urged his body to move, not daring to delay any longer. He wanted to stop Xiaohua from breaking through the southern heavenly gate before Immortal Emperor Gaochen and the others arrived. Although Sun Jian's mind was like lightning, his body was still too slow. Before he could fly near the southern heavenly gate, he heard a majestic voice from above the immortal palace. "Audacious Xiaohua, you actually dare to break through the southern heavenly gate of my immortal palace. What crime do you dare to commit?" Wasn't this the familiar voice of the master of the Jade Pure Palace? Looking at the faint purple clouds covering the sky above the immortal palace, Sun Jian turned pale with fright. He couldn't help but grit his teeth and said, "Damn it, which damned bootlicker actually alarmed the master of the Jade Pure Palace?" At this moment, Sun Jian somewhat understood that there was definitely someone stirring up trouble in the middle. Even if Xiaohua wanted to break through the southern heavenly gate, the immortal generals or heavenly kings of the Heavenly King Palace who were guarding the gate would definitely inform Immortal Emperor Gaochen first. And he was responsible for the defense of the immortal palace, so he would definitely know about this before the immortal emperor did. And at this moment, the immortal emperor was clearly in the Medicine Flower Palace, waiting for him to wake up and disturb him. How could the master of the Supreme Pure Palace be one step ahead of Xiaohua? And the master of the Jade Pure Palace almost never asked about the matters of the Immortal Palace. If someone didn't specifically inform him today, how could he come out of the Jade Pure Palace? Thinking about how he had been tracking down Sun Hao's master ever since he returned to the Immortal Palace, all the clues were vague and he couldn't find the source at all. Sun Jian couldn't help but sigh. Previously, when Wen Chu entered the Literature Star Palace, Sun Jian earnestly asked the immortal emperor and Wen Chu to temporarily keep this a secret. Once Wen Chu entered the Literature Star Palace, she would shut the door and refuse all visitors to buy time for him to track down the real culprit. And now that Xiaohua had caused a ruckus in the Immortal Palace, Sun Jian himself was clear that he probably wouldn't have the chance to find the real culprit who killed the Black Ruins Mountain garrison and take revenge for them. Chapter 45-97. Before Sun Wu could reach the southern heavenly gate, Sun Jian heard the arrogant voice of the heavenly being outside the southern heavenly gate. "Old man, I didn't accompany fellow Daoist Xiao to the immortal palace to break through your southern heavenly gate. Fellow Daoist Xiao has something to ask your immortal emperor." Fellow Daoist. The lord of the Jade Pure Palace's tone was extremely dignified. Although he sounded amiable, no one dared to underestimate him. "Since we're here, how can we end things without a fight?" Haha. The celestial being laughed even louder. "I understand. Fellow Daoist Xiao is a Daoist cultivator, and you are Confucian cultivators. If you don't measure fellow Daoist Xiao's strength, I'm afraid you won't feel at ease. Moreover, even if fellow Daoist Xiao comes to the immortal palace and has no ill intentions, you all still have to give him a good beating to suppress his arrogance and protect your immortal palace's face. There's no point in saying more." The lord of the Jade Pure Palace's voice was still indifferent. Following that, the rumbling of stars and the rumbling of lightning could be heard. The entire immortal palace began to shake violently again, and countless lights and shadows appeared around Sun Jian. "Go." Sun Jian did not dare to delay. He raised his hand and took out his token, throwing it to the immortal general beside him. "Take my order and inform all the immortal soldiers and immortal generals in the palace to come out and set up defenses." "Yes, General." The immortal general did not dare to delay. He took the token and left. "You all wait." Sun Jian looked around and ordered, "Set up defenses around the southern heavenly gate. You must not let the southern heavenly gate collapse. Do not let the immortal palace's defensive array collapse." "Yes, General." The immortal soldiers and immortal generals received the order and hurriedly left. After Sun Jian finished giving orders, he looked up at the rolling purple clouds above the immortal palace. Sun Jian felt bitter. He knew that he could not participate in such a battle, but he had no other choice. Moving his body, Sun Jian flew toward the southern heaven gate without hesitation. When Sun Jian reached the southern heavenly gate, the entire southern heavenly gate was already filled with immortal soldiers and immortal generals. The space outside the southern heavenly gate was in chaos. Lightning, clouds, purple clouds, and sword energy were everywhere. The space shattered and shattered again. The power of space was like a giant hand rubbing it, destroying it over and over again. The immortal palaces, immortal generals and immortal generals and immortal generals and immortals were all panicked. They used chi to protect the southern heavenly gate, and at the same time, they used eye clear technique to look outside. And looked outside the gate with disbelief. Their eyes art. Immortal eyes looked, and immortal generals and immortal general and immortal generals and immortals and immortals and immortal gate. Immortal gate and immortal. Immortal gate, immortal eyes and immortal gate was, generals and immortal general and immortal gate was. Immortal Emperor Go Chen was the master of Immortal Palace, the most powerful character in the world in the eyes of these soldiers. The masters of the four clans might not be weaker than Immortal Emperor Go Chen, but in the eyes of these soldiers, there was a huge gap. The only one who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Immortal Emperor Go Chen was the master of the Three Purities Palace. The masters of the Three Purities Palace usually did not show their faces. Most of the immortal soldiers and generals had never seen their faces, and some of them had never even seen the masters of the Three Purities Palace. However, this didn't stop the master of the Three Purities Palace from becoming the pride of the Immortal Palace. However, the fierce battle that had just taken place outside the southern heavenly gate had completely overturned their expectations. None of them had thought that there would be a grand ascension stage human among the Taoist cultivators who had always been hunted and trampled on, who could fight the master of the Three Purities Palace. It was only now that more immortal soldiers and immortal generals heard about Xiaohua, the profound yellow list, and the fortune gate from others. Everyone. Sun Jian saw that everyone was panicking and said, "The battle outside the southern heavenly gate is exciting, but our duty is to protect the Immortal Palace. Everyone, please focus your energy on the defensive formation and not." Unfortunately, before Sun Jian could finish, an immortal general said coldly, "General Sun, this is the southern heavenly gate, not the southern heavenly gate. Similarly, this is the territory of the Heavenly King Palace, not your Sun Palace. If you were perfected Lord Qingyuan, would have to bow my head and listen to your orders. You're just the new Sun Palace general. Do you really think you're perfected Lord Qingyuan?" "That's right." The other immortal general also withdrew the clear sight light, and the shock on his face faded a little. He glanced at Sun Jian indifferently and echoed, "This is the Immortal Palace, a place with rules, not the remote village you are in. Nothing can be accomplished without rules, do you know that? You should take care of your Sun Palace and don't stretch your hands too far." Ahem. The general of the Heavenly King Palace who was defeated by Xiaohua coughed and said, "What are you all talking about? General Sun Cho has good intentions. How can I not cooperate with the Heavenly King Palace's subordinates?" General Sun came to help because he was thinking about the Heavenly King Palace. "It's better than those bastards from the Lunar Temple who are always scheming against us, right?" "Yes, yes." The immortal generals smiled and said, "This general is just reminding General Sun to be careful. After all, he's new here and doesn't know the rules of the Immortal Palace. It's fine if we're here, but if he meets those bastards from the Lunar Temple, won't he still suffer a great loss?" If it was before, Sun Jian might have scolded them. However, he had changed his appearance recently and became the great general of the Sun Palace. He saw the other side of the Immortal Palace with his other eye. Previously, he was the relative of the Immortal Emperor. Everyone flattered, followed, and respected him. No one dared to say anything against him. He thought that the entire Immortal Palace was harmonious. Even if it was a bit gloomy, it was just a passing cloud in the wind. But now, his other eye could see the undercurrents of the Immortal Palace better than his third eye. It allowed him to see the strangeness in people's hearts. This gave this outstanding commander a chance to sharpen himself. It could be said that the current Sun Jian was no longer the Sun Jian from before. His gains in this period of time were comparable to the gains of the heaven prison for tens of thousands of years. Therefore, Sun Jian smiled faintly and cupped his hands at the immortal generals. This one has said too much. This one thanks everyone for the reminder. However, this one also wants to remind everyone that you are all immortal generals of the immortal palace. You have the duty to protect the immortal palace. No matter where you are, you can't forget your duty. Duty has no limits. After saying this, Sun Jian ignored the shock and disdain of the immortal generals and rushed towards the immortal palace's defensive formation. Sun Cho, what are you doing? The immortal general of the Heaven King Palace was shocked and raised his hand to stop him. Do you want to die? Unfortunately, the immortal general's strength was much weaker than Sun Jian's. He had just stretched out his arm when a powerful force stopped him. You. Seeing Sun Jian's cultivation, the immortal general was even more shocked. Because like the other immortal generals, he naturally thought that the so-called Sun Cho was only at the high 6th level of essence energy or the low 7th level of essence energy. He didn't know that Sun Jian's strength had already surpassed the heavenly kings. Sun Jian didn't have the time to care about the immortal generals and rushed into the immortal palace's defensive formation. Whoosh! Sun Jian felt the clouds in front of him sway and waves of bone-chilling wind blew over. The defensive armor on his body produced multicolored light that wanted to protect Sun Jian. Unfortunately, the multicolored light just surged out. Pa pa pa. There was a series of crisp sounds and the multicolored light was blown into pieces. The inscriptions on the armor were shattered in the wind. Then, ka ka ka. There was another series of cracking sounds. The defensive armor actually cracked. Roar. Sun Jian didn't dare to be slow. He let out a long roar and in the shattered void, some righteous chi forcefully descended. Sun Jian also activated his child body. Rays of multicolored light surged and turned into 1,000 feet in size. Then, Sun Jian waved his three-pointed, double-edged sword and used the eye-clear technique to take a look. Then, he flew towards the lightning hand. At this moment, the celestial being was fighting with the Jade Pure Palace Master. When the celestial being activated the celestial being's white bone, he needed Xiao Hua's essence energy. When he listened to the discussion in the Star Moon Palace, he obtained the cultivation technique. When he was refining the 10,000 extinguishing celestial dipper, he also integrated the celestial being's white bone into his body. At this moment, he no longer needed Xiao Hua's essence energy to activate the white bone at will. However, the vast consciousness in the white bone still couldn't be controlled by him. Fortunately, this consciousness was the same as the heavenly phoenix consciousness in Feng Wu's body. If it wasn't at a critical moment, it would also be in a deep sleep and wouldn't interfere. Therefore, when the celestial being activated his 3 heads and 6 arms, the triple radiant lightning on his 6 arms struck down like lightning. He really looked like an ancient thunder god. Looking at the Jade Pure Palace Master again, he had a horsetail whisk in his hand and a purple cloud above his head. As he waved the horsetail whisk, thousands of purple cloud strands appeared out of thin air. Each strand of cloud strands had the power to overturn rivers and seas, and each strand of light could tear space apart. Although the Jade Pure Palace Master wasn't wearing any armor and was only wearing an emperor's outfit, the purple cloud above his head sent down thousands of layers of purple clouds to protect him. No matter how arrogant the celestial being's triple radiant lightning was, when it struck the purple clouds, it only shook for a moment before disappearing without a trace. It's indeed refreshing. The celestial being's roar reverberated in the distance. 3 pillars of light of different colors shot out from his 3 heads. Where the pillars of light landed, the void shattered and the purple clouds melted. It was quite powerful. However, when the 3 pillars of light landed on the purple cloud above the Jade Pure Palace Master's head, although the purple cloud shook rapidly, the pillars of light couldn't penetrate it. Boom, boom. The celestial being was somewhat enraged. Lightning reappeared on his 6 arms. The lightning was fiercer than a flood dragon, and the lightning was fiercer than a sharp sword. The purple clouds under the Jade Pure Palace Master's horsetail whisk couldn't withstand the lightning's ravaging and shattered. A bright purple light gradually appeared on the horsetail whisk, and layers of inscriptions swam on it like tadpoles. Give it a tip, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 4598. As Sun Jian flew through the air, his clear gaze swept across the celestial and pure Jade Palace Master. Seeing that the two were evenly matched, his heart calmed down slightly. Then, his figure flashed, wanting to teleport to the side of the battle between Xiaohua and the Tai Ching Palace Master. Unfortunately, he couldn't move at all after activating his true qi. The space around him was shattered, and layers of spatial restrictions overflowed. How could he teleport here? Sun Jian was helpless. He waved his 3-pointed, double-edged sword in his hand, protecting himself as he flew towards Xiaohua. At this time, the Tai Ching Palace Master seemed to be really angry with Xiaohua. His fists and kicks emitted sharp whistling sounds. The light and darkness were already somewhat chaotic, and a dim gray gradually appeared around the Tai Ching Palace Master's body. Not to mention, the Tai Ching Palace Master's crown was already somewhat crooked, and his originally neat armor was also torn to pieces by Xiaohua's thunderous hands. Looking at Xiaohua again, he wasn't much better. Many places on the several thousand feet long golden body were broken, and the 2-colored clouds seemed to stick to it, spreading in all directions from time to time. Good, good, good. The Tai Ching Palace Master shouted again, and raised his hand to slap the top of his head. With a loud bang, the 2-colored true qi gushed out like a volcanic eruption, and a 2-colored list flashed with dazzling light as it rushed out. The moment the list appeared, endless propitious qi surged, and the power of the heavenly Tao and the aura of tens of thousands of people instantly filled the entire space. Wherever the propitious qi of the list went, the void that was previously shattered by everyone quickly healed, and a clear qi seeped out from the void. Seeing the leaderboard charge out, the light and darkness that had filled the space earlier converged into the leaderboard like a river flowing into the sea. An even more powerful sealing force surged out from the leaderboard. How could Xiaohua not know that this was the real mysterious yellow leaderboard? He narrowed his eyes, feeling the power of tearing space around him, and whispered, "Profound yellow list? Tai Ching Palace Master, Tai Ching Palace Master." In the distance, Sun Jian saw the Tai Ching Palace Master take out the profound yellow list and couldn't help but become anxious. He waved his 3-pointed, double-edged sword and madly rushed over, shouting, "This matter was caused by this junior, please calm your anger for now." Sun Cho? The Grand Purity Palace Master was slightly taken aback as he looked at Sun Jian in confusion. Although the Xianhuang proclamation didn't stay still, it paused slightly and only locked onto Xiaohua's aura. "Hee, what are you doing here?" Xiaohua saw Sun Jian waving his 3-pointed, double-edged blade over. Although Sun Jian's face was unfamiliar, he immediately understood. He smiled and asked, stopping the magic power in his hand. "What about Immortal Emperor Gochen? Kuo Yu has been reporting for so long, but he still hasn't shown his face." Sun Jian bowed and said, "Tao Master, this matter is all Junior's fault. Junior apologizes to Senior here, and I hope that Senior will not make things worse." "Oh. You. What did you do wrong?" Xiaohua was slightly stunned, and asked curiously. This old man only came to the Immortal Palace to ask the Immortal Emperor a question. Sun Jian was also taken aback, but he quickly said respectfully, "I know I'm in the wrong. Although I have already reported to the Immortal Emperor and asked His Majesty to give up the expedition, the decree of the expedition to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range has not been reviewed by the Immortal Emperor. So, if Senior wants to ask the Immortal Emperor for an explanation, then Junior will bear all responsibility." Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, when he saw Sun Jian's anxious expression, he was moved by his sincerity, and said with a smile, "This matter has nothing to do with you. The matter of the soaring dragon mountain range has already passed." This old man came to ask the immortal emperor about another matter. Another matter? Sun Jian was puzzled, and asked curiously, "Senior, what other matter is worthy of such a large mobilization?" "What do you mean by a large mobilization?" Xiao Hua sneered. This old man came alone and followed the etiquette to wait outside the southern heavenly gate. Who would have thought that the master of the Xianhuang proclamation would shamelessly come out and ask for a beating? And that Jade Pure Palace master even wanted to win with numbers. Humph. The master of the Tai Ching Palace's expression changed, and a loud rumbling sound came from his body. Boom. At this moment, in the distant immortal palace, there was a huge tremor, and rays of light rushed over like a torrential river. The rays of light carried endless majesty. Wherever the rays of light passed, the shattered void healed, and the chaotic order of heaven and earth instantly became orderly. Even the awe-inspiring energy and heaven and earth origin energy were orderly. Good. Seeing that the master of the Tai Ching Palace had put away his horsetail whisk, the celestial also felt bored. He looked around and shouted, as expected of the master of the immortal palace, "This one admires you." Roar. Wherever the rays of light passed, the roar of a dragon resounded in the sky. Jia. Along with the dragon's roar, the sound of a phoenix's cry also emerged. Between the auspicious appearance of a dragon and a phoenix, thousands of auspicious signs were born in the space. The immortal palace that had previously been beaten into a shadow of light actually became full at this moment, and it once again stood tall with an imposing aura. The light and shadow were peaceful, and the sound of music and metal and stone also came. At the end of the auspicious rays of light, an emperor wearing a sun and moon imperial robe and a crown of heaven and earth appeared. This emperor's figure was only 1,000 zhang tall, but in the vicinity of this 1,000 zhang, countless inscriptions surged like flood dragons, and a world-suppressing aura was emitted from this emperor's figure. The rays of light came from the golden throne under the emperor. Layers of golden light fell into the sky, and each wave of rays of light was higher than the last, mightily rushing into the space. Xiao Hua stood there and looked at the immortal emperor that was much smaller than his golden body, and his eyes narrowed. This emperor's aura condensed together with the golden throne like a monolith. A kind of heavenly Tao-like majesty rushed out from the rays of light, and that monolith's dignified aura caused Xiao Hua's heart to thump loudly. This immortal emperor is the center of the fate of Confucian cultivators, and the golden throne represents the highest imperial power of Confucian cultivators in the world. Who knows how many generations, how many supreme beings have sat on it? This kind of accumulation is far from what this Xiao can compare to. Seeing immortal Emperor Gaochen come out, Sun Jian wanted to move over, but looking at Xiao Hua and the master of Tai Ching Palace, he hesitated. Seeing Sun Jian like this, Xiao Hua's heart moved, and he transmitted a message. "Sun Jian, you still haven't found the mastermind behind Sun Hao?" Sun Jian turned his head somewhat absent-mindedly and said, "I'm afraid I can't. Previously, I had some clues, but they were inextricably linked, and I couldn't find the source. Today, this junior must return to his original appearance." "Don't worry." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "This old man just found out that Sun Hao's master might be related to the Heaven and Earth sect, which is the so-called Tianji Hall. However, this old man doesn't know who exactly it is." "Oh." Sun Jian was stunned, and his absent-minded expression immediately disappeared. A trace of clarity appeared in his eyes, and it was replaced by an expression of sudden realization. "I see. This junior understands now." Sun Jian transmitted a message. "This guy hid too deeply. This junior has some clues here, but it seems that they have nothing to do with him. If senior didn't remind me, this junior definitely wouldn't have thought of it. However, since senior said so, most of the clues have a suitable conclusion." At this point, Sun Jian bowed to the master of Tai Ching Palace and said, Master of Tai Ching Palace, this is a misunderstanding. Taoist Master Shao came to the Immortal Palace to explain something to His Majesty the Immortal Emperor. Southern Heavenly Gate's Guardian General Kuo Yu is a general of the Heavenly King Palace. According to this junior's knowledge, he is also a person of the Xianhuang order. Taoist Master Shao came to my Immortal Palace, and he didn't report such important news to the Immortal Emperor, but overstepped his authority to report to the Master of Tai Ching Palace. This crime is punishable by death. Damn it, do you think you are perfected, Lord Qingyuan? The Master of Tai Ching Palace was a bit anxious, and the Xianhuang order that had stopped was about to fall. Even if this junior isn't perfected, Lord Qingyuan, this junior is still a general of the Sun Palace. Even if Kuo Yu can't find the Immortal Emperor in the Lingyun Palace, he still has to report this matter to this general. Sun Jian was not moved at all, and replied indifferently, if the Master of Tai Ching Palace doesn't want Kuo Yu to die, then please wait for the Immortal Emperor's decree. With that, Sun Jian turned and left, no longer paying attention to the Master of Tai Ching Palace. Damn it! The Master of Tai Ching Palace was furious. No one in this Immortal Palace has ever contradicted this king. Who do you think you are? Haha. Xiao Hua laughed loudly. With a swing of his Taoist robe, not only did he shatter the Immortal Emperor's multicolored light, but he also extinguished the ray of light that the Master of Tai Ching Palace had shot towards Sun Jian. He laughed and said, there wasn't one in the past, but it doesn't mean that there won't be one in the future. Even if you are a green onion, you have the right. How dare you challenge the self-proclaimed master? Boom. The Master of Tai Ching Palace was ashamed and angry. He raised his hand and pointed at the Xianhuang order. The entire Xianhuang order suddenly expanded, and two different kinds of light and darkness surged out, destroying the clear light and multicolored light of the Immortal Emperor and falling towards Xiao Hua. Humph. Xiao Hua coldly snorted and shouted, the imperial weapon of a Confucian cultivator. Is only a so-so, and you dare to be arrogant in front of my Tao sect? With that, Xiao Hua raised his hand and waved, and a golden light rushed out. The Ting Jiao shears transformed into a golden dragon and pounced on the Xianhuang order. The dragon's tail swept, tearing the space apart, and the golden light entered the Xianhuang order in the blink of an eye. Hiss. The Master of Tai Ching Palace was shocked and shouted, Ting Jiao shears? You. How can you have the Ting Jiao shears? Xiao Hua was also stunned and looked at the Master of Tai Ching Palace in confusion. He didn't understand how the Master of Tai Ching Palace knew about the Ting Jiao shears, but he still coldly said, you have the Xianhuang order, why can't I have the Ting Jiao shears? Shua. With a tearing sound, the Ting Jiao shears cut through the Xianhuang order. Thousands of inscriptions appeared on the Xianhuang order, and each of these inscriptions looked like a Confucian cultivator and a general. The Ting Jiao shears were sharp and cut the inscriptions in half, but when it landed on the Xianhuang order, it was useless. Oh, so it's only half. The Master of Tai Ching Palace finally saw it clearly and seemed to be relieved. He smiled and said, if you had the complete Ting Jiao shears, this king might have lost to you. However, if you want to rely on this piece of trash to win against this king, then you must be dreaming, give it a reward, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 4599. Fellow cultivator, don't worry, I'll help you. At this moment, he saw a five-colored cloud appear at the peak of the celestial palace. This cloud contained endless starlight, and a similarly vast origin energy swept over. Wasn't it Wen Chu who came on the cloud? Damn it. Supreme Purity Palace Master saw Wen Chu flying over and cursed, this Supreme Purity Palace Master didn't come out earlier or later. Why did he come out now? This Literature Palace Master has the mysteries of the five energies and is studying the riddle of Wen Chu. He's a strong opponent right now. This Xiao Hua and Bai Gu from earlier will require an immortal emperor to personally take them down. At this time, Sun Jian had already teleported in front of immortal Emperor Go Chen. The emperor's face was hidden behind the crown, so one couldn't see his expression. However, just by looking at the several hundred strands of fate swimming around him, one could tell that the emperor was furious. Immortal Emperor Gao Chen stood up from his golden throne after seeing the master of the literature Star Palace. His avatar suddenly expanded as if he wanted to personally take action. Your Majesty. Sun Jian shouted, you're a supreme, how can you personally face the enemy? I'm not talented enough, but I'm here to ask for permission to lead my troops to kill Xiao Hua. Oh. The immortal emperor was obviously stunned. He looked at Sun Jian in confusion, then at Xiao Hua and Wen Chu, who had turned into a ray of light and descended. Your Majesty. Sun Jian didn't have time to send a message and shouted, Your Majesty, please trust me. As long as you're willing to let me command your troops, I'll be able to get to the bottom of this. Immortal Emperor Go Chen didn't know what Sun Jian meant, but when he heard the words, get to the bottom of this, he understood. Right when he was about to say something, another explosion came from the palace. Immortal Emperor Go Chen's golden throne also emitted a golden light. This golden light flew into the palace and merged with the golden light from the palace. Whoosh! The golden light disappeared and another golden throne appeared next to Immortal Emperor Go Chen. It was the East Sea Empress in her palace robe. She sat there with great elegance. However, at this moment, the East Sea Empress' appearance was also obscured by the radiance and could not be seen. Immortal Emperor Go Chen hesitated for a moment when he saw the Eastern Sea Empress. He then sat down and nodded. You will be in charge of the Immortal Palace's soldiers. Thank you, Your Majesty. Sun Jian was overjoyed. Where are Heavenly King Qin Yu and Heavenly King Fu Yu? The two heavenly monarchs exchanged a perplexed glance upon hearing this. How could they possibly be a match for a grand ascension stage human being? However, since Sun Jian personally called them out and they received the order from Immortal Emperor Go Chen, the two of them didn't dare to be negligent. They braced themselves and flew out to answer, We are here. Heavenly Kings. Sun Jian's expression did not change. He raised his hand and pointed at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua is a Taoist Mahayana. Although he has cultivated a Transcendence golden body, his punches and kicks are inferior. Activate your sub-bodies and attack his lower body. This. Heavenly King Qin Yu and Heavenly King Fu Yu gritted their teeth and hesitated for a moment before cupping their fists. We understand. Where are the palace guards of the Pupil Lu Palace, Hua Le Palace, Xingyue Palace, Star Sun Palace, and Pure Abode Palace? Sun Jian randomly assigned the soldiers to attack. Finally, he pondered for a moment before asking, Where is the Palace Lord of the Divination Hall? Even Immortal Emperor Go Chen was puzzled by Sun Jian's decision to send the Palace Lord of the Divination Hall, let alone Xie Xian himself. However, since he had given Sun Jian the authority to dispatch the soldiers, he couldn't stop him. The Palace Lord of the Divination Hall, Xie Xian, flew out from the shadows and said without batting an eyelid, I am here. What orders do you have for me, General Sun? Palace Lord Xie. Sun Jian didn't issue any orders. Instead, he whispered a few words to Xie Xian. Xie Xian nodded slightly. After Sun Jian finished speaking, Xie Xian actually said, I understand. Leave this matter to me. With that, Xie Xian's figure flickered. The clouds nearby rippled and he disappeared. Generals. Sun Jian cupped his fists and said, The dignity of the Immortal Palace will be determined in this battle. I ask all of you to work together and capture the traitor of the Taoism in front of His Majesty. Yes. The generals saw that Xie Xian had disappeared and naturally knew that he was the real killer. They were reassured and answered in unison. Then, Sun Jian waved his three-pointed, double-edged saber and led the immortal generals toward Xiao Hua on auspicious clouds. Your Majesty. The East Sea Empress was puzzled and asked in a low voice, "What is General Sun doing? Is he going to fight the Grand Ascension stage human?" "Yes, I'm afraid so." Immortal Emperor Go Chen nodded and looked outside the southern heavenly gate. At this time, the heavenly light of the immortal palace was actually a bit red. Under this red light, the palace that had stood for billions of years looked a bit desolate. The auspicious auras around the immortal emperor and the blinding golden light from the golden throne couldn't hide the faded color of the palace. Amidst the many clear lights, tens of thousands of immortal generals held their weapons and nervously looked at the palace. Outside of the southern heavenly gate, in the almost boundless space, Xiaohua proudly stood there. The soaring dragon scissors had returned from the sky. Its golden light dimmed and its cries were miserable. It clearly couldn't do anything. Wen Chu was still a distance away from Xiaohua when he landed. Due to Xiaohua's message, he didn't approach and only cautiously looked around. As for the Grand Purity Palace Master, he had a sneer on his face. He raised his hand and pointed. The profound yellow notice that was even more violent than an army of thousands of soldiers and horses had expanded to 1,000 miles in size and fell towards Xiaohua again. Under the profound yellow notice, all of the worldly origin energy and righteous energy were restrictions. All of the power of space fell into it as if it fell into a swamp. Even Xiaohua's divine intent couldn't break through the suppression of the profound yellow notice. Hee hee. Xiaohua looked at the descending profound yellow notice and sneered. He shouted, "Poor Hong Meng. That day, he was probably suppressed by you all under such a pincer attack, right? However, today, I'm afraid you all won't be able to have any more wishful thinking." With that, Xiaohua suddenly activated the fury of thunder. The lightning around Xiaohua's body suddenly became sharp and gave birth to a punishment force several times stronger than before. Xiaohua then opened his mouth again. Woo! The six-colored spirit fire turned into a thunderbolt and shot out. Not only that, Xiaohua raised his left hand and grabbed the void. Countless lightning bolts condensed into the shadow of the immortal slaying platform. The six-colored spirit fire swam around the edge of the immortal slaying platform. Slash! Xiaohua roared again, and the immortal slaying platform in his hand turned into 100 miles in size and slammed into the profound yellow notice. At the same time, with Xiaohua's roar, the sound of thunder was also activated. The sound came later but arrived first, hitting the profound yellow notice like a storm. Pa pa pa. Countless inscriptions on the armor were destroyed by the sound of thunder, and the light of the 1,000-mile profound yellow notice suddenly dimmed by 30%. Just as the master of the Tai Ching Palace was surprised, there was a loud bang. The shadow of the immortal slaying stage crashed into the mysterious yellow proclamation, hitting where the light and darkness were. Layers of lightning punishment light that were more turbulent than stormy waves pounced on the surface of the mysterious yellow proclamation. The entire profound yellow notice trembled rapidly, and the inscriptions on the armor that hadn't been destroyed before were destroyed by the lightning punishment light again. The previously arrogant light faded and the darkness retreated. A seemingly simple and unadorned list with strange runes finally revealed its true form. Damn it! The Grand Purity Palace Master cursed and hurriedly waved his hands. The two clouds of light and darkness rushed toward the profound yellow notice. At this time, Xiaohua's figure moved again. Under the light and shadow, he rushed to the front of the profound yellow notice faster than teleportation. Xiaohua raised his hand and waved. Break! With a roar, the wishful steel staff was raised and hit the profound yellow notice with a bang. How strong was Xiaohua? How heavy was the wishful steel staff? After the profound yellow notice was destroyed by the fury of thunder, it had revealed its true form. Under the heavy blow of the initial force of the world, the original form fell like broken cotton. Damn it! The Grand Purity Palace Master's heart felt like it was dripping blood. He hurriedly urged the light to retract the profound yellow board, but at that moment, an extremely strange force appeared. It wanted to sever his connection with the profound yellow board. Not good. The Tai Ching Palace Master turned pale with fright as he hurriedly opened his mouth. A vast suction force transformed into sword qi that swept up a corner of the Xianhuang board. Shua. The Xianhuang board rapidly shrank and fell into the Tai Ching Palace Master's mouth. Ah. Dao. Taoist magic? Xiaohua tried to use his mind to take back the profound yellow notice, but failed. He sensed that the Grand Purity Palace Master had used a Taoist magic in the end. Because this suction force seemed to be sword qi, but it was obvious that this sword qi was somewhat different from the flying swords of Confucian cultivators. As a Taoist Mahayana realm cultivator, Xiaohua could clearly sense it. Taoist Master Xiao. Just as Xiaohua was shocked, Sun Jian had already landed in front of him with many immortal generals. He waved his three-pointed, double-edged sword and shouted, "Junior has already asked for the immortal emperor's decree. Since you accidentally broke into my immortal palace immortal domain, it can't be considered an intentional offense. Now you have two choices. One is to bow your head in front of the immortal palace master and admit your mistake, and leave the immortal palace master. The other is to take a blow from my immortal palace generals." Xiaohua looked at Sun Jian with some confusion, waiting for Sun Jian to transmit his voice. Unfortunately, Sun Jian was full of righteousness and didn't show any favoritism. However, at this moment, Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and glanced at Wen Chu. He sneered at Sun Jian and said, "This old man doesn't know if you're the one who's sick or if I'm the one who's sick. This old man has fellow Taoist Wen Chu and fellow Taoist Heavenly Tao. Even if you add old man Gaochen, your immortal palace is still no match for my fortune gate. Why should this old man listen to your choice?" After he finished speaking, he didn't wait for Sun Jian to speak. He coldly snorted and said, "Fellow Taoist Wen Chu, you can make your move now. Kill." After Wen Chu transmitted his voice to Xiaohua with his mind, a mysterious smile appeared on his face. He rubbed his hands, and a five-colored hand appeared out of thin air and fell towards the Grand Purity Palace Master. Chapter 4600. Scholar Palace Master, have you thought it through? The Tai Ching Palace Master was a bit confused. He coldly looked at Wen Chu and said, "Are you going to attack this king?" "Not just him." Xiaohua laughed loudly, "There's also this Xiao." As he spoke, Xiaohua also rubbed his hands together. A five-colored hand of lightning attacked the Tai Ching Palace Master from another direction. Generals. Sun Jian's face turned cold. He ordered, "Attack. Kill." The immortal generals were helpless. They once again braced themselves and charged forward from all directions. Seeing Heavenly King Qin Yu and Heavenly King Fu Yu pouncing towards Xiaohua's legs, Lu Tong Palace, Huala Palace, Xingyue Palace, Xinyang Palace, Jingju Palace, and the other palace guards pouncing towards Xiaohua's arms and other areas, Sun Jian roared loudly. His three-pointed, double-edged blade drew a cold light in the air and chopped towards Xiaohua's forehead. Sun Jian had only just attacked when he saw Xiaohua suddenly turn his head. The delusion breaker Dharma eye between his brows suddenly opened. A silver pillar of light shot out from the Dharma eye. With a boom, it shot into the void. Ah! A shocked scream came from the void. Immediately after, the Tianji Palace Master Xia Xian's figure staggered out of the void. At this moment, there was a bloody hole in Xia Xian's arm. Four-colored true qi rushed out and was healing the wound. Clearly, he was injured by Xiaohua's delusion breaker Dharma eye. Io. Just as Xia Xian's figure appeared, Sun Jian's shocked cry came, "Tianji Palace Master, dodge." Xia Xian felt a cold wind in his face. It was Sun Jian's three-pointed, double-edged blade. He didn't have time to think about why Sun Jian called him Tianji Palace Master. His figure quickly flashed as he tried to dodge. But at this moment, the situation suddenly changed. The hand of lightning and five-colored hand that were originally falling towards the Tai Ching Palace Master suddenly changed directions and firmly covered him. The Tai Ching Palace Master was stunned. He looked at Sun Jian in confusion. The two-colored light he activated also condensed and didn't shoot out. Damn it! Seeing the space around him being sealed by the giant hand, how could Xie Xian not know that he had fallen into Sun Jian and Xiaohua's trap? He angrily cursed. The multicolored light around his body blossomed like a scorching sun, and a boundless aura instantly rushed out from the seal of the large hand. Gotcha! Xiaohua's hand of thunder and Wen Chu's large hand of five colors unexpectedly cracked at this time. How is that possible? The Grand Purity Palace Master was shocked as he growled. When did Xie Xian reach the 9th grade of essence energy? You. The Tai Pure Palace Master looked at Sun Jian in surprise and said, "You're already the sage of literature?" It wasn't just the Tai Pure Palace Master. Heavenly King Qin Yu, Heavenly King Fu Yu, and the others were also very shocked. They couldn't believe their eyes. Everyone. Immortal Emperor Gaochen glanced at Xiaohua and revealed a meaningful smile. He said, "Everything before was set up by this emperor. The goal was to find this heaven-defying thief who secretly took the Son of Heaven's sword's shell. Xiaohua, enlightened Master Xiao, is a good friend of the Wisdom Palace Master. How could he cause trouble at the Southern Heaven's Gate? And the Scholar Palace Master, Wen Chu, is the immortal master of our Confucian cultivators. How could he betray the immortal palace? Today, Daoist Xiao helped this emperor capture this emperor. This emperor is very grateful, so this emperor will confer upon Daoist Xiao the title of Thunder Master." Immortal Emperor Gaochen didn't ask for Xiaohua's opinion. Instead, he looked at the Tai Pure Palace Master and said with a smile, "Tai Pure Palace Master, you've seen Daoist Xiao's lightning hand. Do you think this title of Thunder Master is suitable? Your Majesty is wise." The Tai Pure Palace Master was also confused, so he could only cup his hands and flatter. "Good." Immortal Emperor Gaochen smiled and said, "This emperor, in the name of the Immortal Palace Master, confer upon Daoist Xiao the title of Thunder Master." What does this have to do with? Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He knew that this was Immortal Emperor Gaochen's imperial technique. Even though he didn't really want to attack the Immortal Palace, his battle with the Tai Pure Palace Master and the Jade Pure Palace Master at the Southern Heavenly Gate would definitely make him famous in the 3 continents. This fame was a naked slap to Immortal Emperor Gaochen's face. No matter what the truth of the matter was, Immortal Emperor Gaochen couldn't defend himself. But at this moment, Immortal Emperor Gaochen actually took advantage of Xie Xian's capture to cleverly resolve the crisis with a force of 4 taels to 1,000 jin. He said that this embarrassing farce was deliberately arranged by himself. One had to admit that this Immortal Emperor Gaochen was truly the master of the Immortal Palace, causing Xiaohua to feel admiration in his heart. Xiaohua didn't put the title of Thunder Master in his eyes. He actually had the heart to refuse, but at this moment, after Immortal Emperor Gaochen finished speaking, one after another, jade-like inscriptions flew out from his mouth. These inscriptions fell in the air and gave birth to countless strange lights and shadows. Where these lights and shadows flashed, the Immortal Palace also faintly trembled. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of thunder rushed out from the Immortal Palace. One after another, the power of an indescribable law transformed into the shape of a crown and fell towards Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. Just as he was about to activate his divine ability to stop it, the 5-colored true qi in his body was lively and surging in his middle dantian. Then, like a fountain, it rushed towards the top of his head. Seeing the abnormality of the 5-colored true qi, Xiaohua knew that this law was not directed at him, so he didn't stop this true qi. However, just as the five-colored true qi was about to rush out of his body, Xiaohua suddenly had a thought and hurriedly suppressed the five-colored true qi. This was because he understood very well that as long as his five-colored true qi rushed out, Wen Chu would definitely have a reaction. Then, the fact that Wen Chu was his avatar would definitely be exposed in front of immortal Emperor Gaochen and the others. Damn it. Xiaohua secretly cursed, this immortal Emperor Gaochen is too cunning. Sure enough, seeing that the crown of light fell on Xiaohua's head and Wen Chu in the distance not making any movements, immortal Emperor Gaochen's eyes unconsciously gave birth to a strange expression. Of course, this expression was blocked by the golden light of the crown, so other people couldn't see it. The light fell on top of Xiaohua's head and turned into a crown. Just as the crown appeared, boom boom boom. Endless thunder and lightning appeared above the immortal palace, roaring as if it was congratulating. Congratulations, Daoist Xiao. Seeing this, Sun Jian couldn't help but be overjoyed. He bowed and said, 10,000 thunder and lightning came to congratulate, Daoist Xiao is a true thunder master. While Sun Jian was congratulating, Xiaohua was even more happy in his heart, because the power of the law didn't just turn into a crown, it also penetrated into Xiaohua's body and fell into the five-colored true qi. Under the power of the law, the five-colored true qi became clearer and clearer, and what surprised Xiaohua the most was that under this law, the four halves of the half-sky heart were actually replenished by 20%. Good. Xiaohua was happy but also a little depressed. After all, he had received benefits from others, how could he not accept the title of Thunder Master? Thus, Xiaohua pretended to be in a difficult position, pondered for a moment, and said, this Xiao thanks Immortal Emperor for thinking highly of me, but this Xiao still has a very important matter to ask Your Majesty. I don't know if Your Majesty can. Rest assured, Daoist Xiao. Immortal Emperor Gaochen smiled and said, you are now my Immortal Palace's Thunder Master. Although you are still a Daoist cultivator, as long as it involves the secrets of my Confucian cultivators, I won't answer you. But as for the other things I know, I can answer you. Moreover, this Thunder Master crown can be taken out at will. If you want to reveal your identity, you can just reveal the crown. If you don't want to reveal it, you can naturally keep it in your body. It doesn't have any special effect on you. Xiaohua was overjoyed. He glanced at the Eastern Sea Empress, and the Empress seemed to have a smile on her face as she slightly nodded at Xiaohua. Xiaohua understood, kept the Thunder Master crown, and said, this Xiao wants to ask, you're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.